Chapter 1229. Heaven and earth were a void. Chaotic chi churned and raged. After the absolute silence of the Tai era, the primordial era, which had just begun to see chi, produced a rather violent chi of vitality. The 3000 era sensed the heaven and earth and nurtured the ancestral chi. Heaven and earth were also influenced by Dara and nurtured the chaotic chi that contained all the ancestral chi but was not suppressed by the great Tao. Dara used its own great Tao to organize the chi of vitality. Thus, the great Tao contained within the ancestral chi was orderly. The chaotic chi was formed from the 3000 ancestral chi. There was no unified great Tao to control it. Thus, just like the later generation's impression of the chaos, the chaotic chi was extremely dangerous and terrifying. The ordinary Dara could only be trapped in the chaos. It used its ancestral chi to suppress the surroundings. The universe and space stirred up all kinds of terrifying space-time storms. The chaotic chi sometimes evolved into a chaotic hole that destroyed everything, and sometimes a huge storm. Only the place enveloped by Dara's ancestral chi was somewhat peaceful. Dara's fruit of Wei extracted connate chi from the surrounding chaos to nourish its own ancestral chi. Within the ancestral chi, there was often a blurry shadow floating. The figure in the chi of vitality was unstable, but it was slowly inhaling and exhaling the chaotic chi. Such chaotic embryos could be called fiend gods. They could be found throughout the primordial era. Upon closer inspection, one could see that these fiend gods' embryos were blurry and had yet to take shape. However, this was enough to show that it was the end of the primordial era. The chi gathered into a form and was about to be nurtured. The chaos had yet to take shape. Everything with form would be eroded and decomposed by the chaos. However, when the 3000 chaotic fiend gods were born, the chaos would gradually lose its untamable and violent nature under their suppression. It would begin to nurture a physical form. This was the state of the next primordial era. River Styx came to the edge of a huge chaotic storm. In front of him was a huge chaotic hole that stirred the universe and space into chaos. It was like a huge whirlpool that inhaled and exhaled chi of vitality. River Styx calculated for a while at the edge of the chaotic hole. The chaotic chi was constantly changing. The entire primordial era was in a state of disorder. Other than the 3000 chaotic fiend gods, there was no fixed benchmark. There was no basis for calculation in such an unpredictable state. Any calculation had to follow certain rules. All calculations were based on grasping the variables and invariants. Using the invariants as the benchmark, one could grasp the variables through the understanding of the laws of change. But in the primal chaos, everything was changing violently without any pattern. Fortunately, there were still some relatively constant things. The 3000 chaos demons were like 3000 nails hammered into the chaos, preventing the chaos from changing beyond Dara's control. What Dara needed was Pangu's creation of the world. If there were no constraints in the chaos, all tangible things would not be able to exist. Perhaps the chaos would evolve into the world of the next era on its own. Everything was possible in the chaos, and it was not impossible to suddenly give birth to a god that contained all of the chaos. The absolute beginning era was an era with endless possibilities. Chaos contained everything, but there was no order. With his own invariants as the benchmark, River Styx used the chaos algorithm to create the algorithm model of the huge chaotic hole before him. He then approached the chaotic hole carefully. UN2 and Avicii's sword light slashed at the chaotic hole. The infinite variables collapsed, and the chaotic chi was divided into yin and yang. It was just like Pangu's creation of the world, and the huge chaotic hole collapsed into a black hole. The entire primal chaos shook. The chaos collapsed, and everything that it contained formed a state of order again. The chaotic hole spewed out endless light of the great path, and it opened up an orderly world. A majestic Taoist palace stood in the center of the world, and countless mysterious sounds came from it. It was just like the appearance of the Great Path. River Styx took a step forward and arrived before the steps of the palace. A Taoist Qing, he stood beside the door of the palace. He nodded at River Styx and said, "Elder ancestor, you did not need me to ring the bell to welcome you. You can enter the palace. As expected, you are also a member of the Purple Cloud Palace." When River Styx arrived before the palace, the orderly world was crushed by the primordial era's chaotic sea, and it returned to chaos. It was as if River Styx, the Taoist palace, and the Taoists were crushed by chaos, and they returned to chaotic chi. Then, the huge amount of chaotic chi turned back into the deep chaotic hole. But in reality, chaos contained everything. For example, this Taoist palace was the chaotic divine demons, which was also the place where the great mediums in Dara discussed matters. The great mediums used unimaginable divine powers to open up a Taoist palace that was one with chaos. To an ordinary Dara, this was a chaotic hole. Only the great mediums could open up chaos, find the other world on the other side of chaos, the Purple Cloud Palace, and enter it. It was like someone writing a program in a chaotic system to communicate with each other. Purple Cloud Palace. Of course, this program could not work in a chaotic system, so he messed up the code and turned it into chaotic data. All the communication in the program was chaotic data, and it could not be recognized. Only when someone created the same code from the chaotic data and entered it, and the chaotic system destroyed the program again, could he find the existence of the program, Purple Cloud Palace. But this program still existed, and it could even be used for communication. It was just that everything was hidden in chaos. The name of this Purple Cloud Palace is not very impressive, but the threshold is quite high. River Styx walked up the stairs. Even for the great mediums, there were not many who could find the Purple Cloud Palace in chaos. How could the other great mediums who did not have the ability of River Styx enter the palace? They must have been brought in by this Taoist who stood under the golden bell. River Styx himself was a newbie in Dara. Even with the three Pure Ones' approval, it was difficult for him to convince the great mediums. So he purposely showed off his skills, and it seemed to be working. "I'm River Styx, a newcomer," River Styx said humbly. "This is my first time attending a meeting in the Purple Cloud Palace, and I'm not familiar with the way. I hope I'm not late. I'm Guangqingzi. I've been entrusted by the great mediums in the Purple Cloud Palace to be the bell receiving messenger." Guangqingzi smiled. "Elder River Styx, please enter. Time cannot be counted in the chaos. Now that the universe is chaotic, there are no laws of time. There are still a few Taoists who have not arrived. Perhaps they were delayed on the way. The three teachers are inside. They have been waiting for you for a long time. It's good that you're not late. Otherwise, I have to go out and start all over again to adjust the time." River Styx pushed the door open and entered. He saw dozens of dark objects scattered around the hall. There was a swaying green lotus, and beside it was a Bodhi tree that looked like a Buddha. There were also a few dignified bodhisattvas, Taoists, and ancient Buddhas sitting behind it. There were giants lying down, gods and demons in the form of Kunpeng and True Dragon. At the top was the three Pure Ones sitting side by side. Behind the three Pure Ones were many Dara from the Mystic Door. Most of them were in the form of humans. There were also a few ancient gods and a few emperors. River Styx found a seat in the north and sat down. He looked like a young Taoist, but behind him was a bottomless abyss. It was the Chaos Hole's end. Sitting next to him was a middle-aged Taoist in black. His face was a little thin and sharp, but behind him was a ferocious demon god roaring at the sky. The demon god was full of evil chi and looked at Mingi vaguely with an unfriendly look. However, Mingi didn't seem to notice. He moved the seat under his, but closer to him. River Styx moved closer to him and said, "Demon Ro, you and I are both Master Demon Daozu. We're colleagues. We should be close." "Don't give me that," Luo Ho said with a look of disdain. "Who's your colleague? You stole the patriarch of the demonic Tao from me. I don't admit it. Do you know that? I don't admit it, and the devil path doesn't admit it either. What is a devil? You're not a devil. You're colluding with the righteous path. You're a traitor of the devil path. The few Daozu Buddhas had a discussion with each other. Sigh. They decided to give my position as the leader of the devil path to someone else. Brother Ro, don't worry. I will definitely make our devil path flourish. River Styx smiled and patted Ro's shoulder. He looked like he had a good relationship with his brother. What do you mean, our and yours? Who is your brother? What do you mean, our devil path? Mine. Devil path. Ro stomped his feet in anger. He pointed at himself and said, It's mine. I was the one who created the devil path. It's all my credit from the beginning. Mine. It has nothing to do with you. These disciples and disciples are all mine. The fate of the devil path is also mine. You can go play by yourself. Brother Ro has contributed to the creation of the devil path. You must not forget that. While Ro was stomping his feet in anger, River Styx had already turned around and started lecturing the devil path's era behind him. Master Ro has contributed to the devil path. You must evaluate him properly. Don't forget your roots. Forgetting the history of the devil path is a crime. When the devil path was created, the mystic door's 3 pure ones were powerful. There was also the Buddhist sect Sakya, who was restless. Every time they tried to prove their Tao, they would beat the devil path up. Every rising star wanted to step on you and rule the world. It's not that there are no talents in the devil path. However, every time a rising star of the devil path appeared, there would be people from the righteous path who bullied us. It's because we are not united. In this conference, we need to set the rules of the primordial world and set the worldview. We, the devil path, must be united and push out the worldview of the devil path universe. If we can't be united, we won't be able to fight for our interests in the conference to divide the primordial world. I have a map of the devil path's primordial world here. Come to take a look. River Styx's vital chi condensed into an array map and distributed it to the devil path's era. The reason why the devil path didn't rise under the leadership of fellow Taoist Ro in the past, it was because we didn't have our base. In other words, we didn't have the heavenly mandate of the devil path. The devil path was shaped as the opposite of the mystic door and the Buddhist sect. It was a tribulation, a difficulty, a foil for them when they reached the Tao. Our whims are all part of their deliberate indulgence. It's a kind of calamity when they recover again. Ever since I became the devil path sect master, I have been reflecting. Does the devil path have a reason to win? We must give ourselves a reason to win, not as a necessary test in the development of things. We must become the inevitable end of the development of things. Therefore, I borrowed the Kuanping ancestral master's Nanming source to create the foundation and home of the devil path in the primordial universe. Ruin of End. River Styx shook the array map in his hand. The array map in the hands of the devil path's era evolved into a huge chaos abyss. It was a sea filled with great destruction, and great extinction. The deep sea eye of the ruin of End devoured everything, bringing with it the aura of primordial destruction. T. Ro was so angry that his hands were trembling. This was blatant slander. When he was developing the devil path, Ro had been cautious and conscientious. He had not slacked off for a single day. The devil path couldn't rise because their opponents were too strong. How many of them were at the same level as him? There were 4 who were stronger than him. He couldn't even defeat one of the 3 pure ones. 4 of them had come to bully him, Ro. How could he not feel aggrieved? Now River Styx was in charge. Relying on the opposite side's power, he erased Ro's imprint and credit. He even wanted to steal the foundation of the devil path. Heaven, let him be tyrannical. You're the heaven in vain. Earth, why is the world so unfair? Not only did the 3 pure ones bully him everywhere, but they also extended their hands into the devil path and supported the ancestor River Styx to fight against him. Ro was so angry that he beat his chest and stamped his feet. This was too much. Seeing that Ro was about to pick up his axe and fight with River Styx, the primeval of beginning quickly signaled Guang Chengzi to ring the bell. As the golden bell shook, the 4 Taoists stood solemnly. Taishang was the first to speak. It's another Pangu era. During the Taisu tribulation, Pangu was born and killed all the chaotic gods and demons. He gathered the Tao fruits of the 3000 era and created the primitive world again. We, the three pure ones, have been Pango more than 10 times, but we still don't dare to act on our own. Therefore, I invite all Taoists to discuss the laws of the primitive world and determine the future trend. Now, at the end of the Taichu era, there should be the first discussion to determine the appearance of the primitive world after Pangu created the heaven. The primeval of beginning held the dawn pearl in his hand and shone brightly. Guang Chengzi rang the bell 3 times, and the primeval lord of great heavenly lord of beginning made a decision. The first discussion is to determine the heaven. There is a proposal from the Buddhism. There are a total of 28 heavens in the 3 realms. Among them, there are 6 heavens in the desire realm, 18 heavens in the color realm, and 4 heavens in the colorless realm. The mystic door still proposes 36 heavens, and the heaven of Dara is the highest. In addition, there are the 9 heavens proposed by Taoist Dijun. The first is Zhongtian, the second is Xiantian, the third is Tsongtian, the fourth is Gongtian, the fifth is Qiantian, the sixth is Qiantian, the seventh is Xiantian, the eighth is Shuntian, and the ninth is Chengtian. There are also the 9 heavens proposed by Taoist Hongdi. That is, the center is called Great Heaven, the east is called Firmament Heaven, the northeast is called Change Heaven, the north is called Dark Heaven, the northwest is called Dark Heaven, the west is called Hao Heaven, the southwest is called Vermilion Heaven, the south is called Min Heaven, and the winter is called Heaven. There is also Taoist Hutu's proposal to use the 4 seasons as the 4 heavens. Spring is Firmament Heaven, summer is Hao Heaven, autumn is Min Heaven, and winter is Heaven. In addition, there is the joint proposal by Taoist Ro and the Buddhist sect. The heavens, dragons, ghosts, deities, constellations, and the underworld are the masters of the 8 directions, up, down, sun, and moon. There are a total of 12 heavens, and the Mahesvara is the highest. There's also the proposal by great emperors away. The starry heavens will be the primordial starry heavens and cover the heavens. Taoist Tai's proposal. The heavens will be one, and there will be no difference in superiority. Taoist Queen Mother of the West proposal is to use the 36 heavenly spirits as the heavens. There is also the proposal by Taoist Shin Shao. There are 9 heavenly heavens, divine heavens, green heavens, red heavens, bright heavens, jade heavens, blue heavens, purple heavens, and supreme heavens as the heavens. After mentioning the worldviews of the great mediums, there are also some heavenly temples that were not great mediums. The primeval beginning also reminded the great mediums one by one. However, it was impossible for these heavenly temples to become the orthodox primordial world. Only the few heavens above could become the structure of the primordial world in the future. Fellow Taoists, each hold a profound bead and evolve the heavenly realm in the purple cloud palace. If the profound bead falls, you cannot establish your own heavenly realm. The remaining heavenly realms of each heavenly realm will be merged into one heavenly realm. In the future, it will evolve again. It will depend on your fate. The primeval Lord of Heaven gestured for everyone to start voting. River Styx did not have his own proposal. The number of heavenly realms had nothing to do with him. Therefore, it did not matter. The ones who decided the primordial world's heavens were either great forces like the mystic door of the Buddhist sect or the leaders of the Emperor Heaven. The structure of the heavenly realm was very important to them. It was related to who the future Emperor Heaven's position belonged to. However, during the Pangu era, River Styx had no intention of coveting the throne of the Emperor Heaven. He simply used his support to make deals with people everywhere. Chapter 12:30. River Styx watched from the sidelines with an opportunistic attitude. He quietly watched the group of great mystical abilities discuss the Tao and compete. He also took the opportunity to observe the attitudes and relationships of the great mystical abilities of the primordial world. He wanted to prepare in advance for the ultimate universe view that he in the Devil Path would launch later and learn from it. In this primordial world game, no matter how earth-shattering one's mystical abilities were, one could not go against the general trend. The so-called general trend was Dara's democracy. Of course, if one really took Dara's democracy seriously and thought that the general trend of the primordial world was decided by all the Dara, it would be foolish and laughable. Did they not see that those who were not the direct descendants of the great mystical abilities could not even participate in the Purple Cloud Palace's meeting? Dara's democracy was a high-level democracy that had absorbed the essence of the various democracies and learned the lessons of human stupidity. It could be said that they were the people and they were the masters. First of all, democracy was the stage of the great mystical abilities. The primordial world was Dara's game and also the game of the great mystical abilities. However, in the end, it was still the game of the great mystical abilities. Those who were not great mystical abilities could not hope to step onto the orthodox stage of the primordial world to decide the general trend. The rule of this game was what the heavenly venerables of Dara said. The general trend did not change, and the small trend could be reversed. In River Styx's words, it was, "Don't touch the interests of the big shots. The rest of the remaining interests and dregs will be left to you." When it did not touch the cake of the interest groups, the Dara could still fully enjoy their freedom. The fate of the primordial world was such a general trend. Regardless of whether you were a transmigrator or a zenith heaven who could know the past and future with a single thought, even if you were an outsider from an alternate universe or a god of creation, if you wanted to touch this cake, you had to first see if your body was strong enough. You had to see if you could withstand the pressure of all the opponents in the heavenly discussion and take away the huge fist of the interest groups in the primordial world. Not to mention River Styx, even the three pure ones, who had dominated Pangu for dozens of eras, could not withstand the backlash of all the powerful beings when they broke the rules of the game. In fact, because the three pure ones had occupied the supreme Pangu for too long, they had accumulated too much karma, and had incurred the wrath of the gods and the resentment of the people. That was why Lady Hutu had gathered 12 powerful beings to form the 12 ancestors of witchcraft to compete with the three pure ones for the supreme Pangu. Countless powerful beings had secretly taken advantage of the situation and supported them without batting an eyelid. If Gong Gong of the 12 Ancestor Sorcerer Group did not have a conflict of interest with River Styx might have sided with Lady Hutu and set the three pure ones up. However, the Taishang had the foresight to sacrifice a Pangu form and bribe River Styx to not oppose them. Now, River Styx could only stand on the three pure ones' side shyly. At the same time, he had to flirt with the Ancestor Sorcerer Group and secretly seduce them. After all, it would not benefit him if the three pure ones were powerful. This was called a silent opponent. The Taishang could only bribe his silence, but not his opposition. Even though it seemed like the Buddhist sect and the mystic sect were the most powerful amongst the grand heavenly immortal realms, it was just that these two sects were the hardest to achieve. The Buddhist sect had created their own enclosed ecosystem, and even their world structure was sealed off. If there was a place within the Buddhist sect, then there would be a place within the Buddhist universe. If there was no place within the Buddhist sect, then there would be no place within the Buddhist worldview. Unless one was subdued to become an outer Tao or a guardian, they would have to bow down to the Buddhist sect. The old demon ancestor, Ro, was forcibly included into the Buddhist sect's closed system after being humiliated by the Buddhist sect many times. He existed as an outer Tao. Speaking of which, he had quite a high status. But which of the great mediums present looked up to him? Speaking of which, the demon ancestor, who was the opposite of the Buddha, seemed to be fighting between good and evil, but in reality, his status in the system was extremely low. Any bodhisattva or Buddha could not give him face. At the end of the day, he was just a tool to show off the Buddhist sect's power. The structure of the Buddhist sect was destined to not be liked by the great mediums. Sakyamuni was also one of the best great mediums in Dara, but he had never come close to Pangu. This showed how much the great mediums rejected the Buddhist sect. Although the mystic door's 36 levels of heaven were stronger than the Buddhist sect, they were not liked for the same reason. The three pure ones were too strong. They had reached the point where they would be suppressed by the other great mediums. Moreover, the heaven was not the core interest of the mystic door. The core interest of the mystic door was the three chi, the primordial universe, the orthodoxy of Pangu, and the three pure ones. As for the heaven of the primordial universe, it was the heaven of the future Emperor Heaven's rule over the primordial universe, and it was the source of the Emperor Heaven's destiny. The three pure ones of the mystic door were respected and could not establish a second core. If the Emperor Heaven was born, how could he be below others? At that time, in the 36 heavens, the Grand Pure Realm's Great Red Heaven, the Shang Pure Realm's Yu Heaven, and the Jade Pure Realm's Qingwei Heaven would be high and mighty. Where would the position left for the Emperor Heaven? Could it be that the three pure ones were above the celestial emperor? Or would they give up the Dara Heaven to the Emperor Heaven and let the Emperor Heaven sit above the three pure ones? It was not that the three pure ones did not support the Emperor Heaven, but that Emperor Heaven was so strong that it made them feel uncomfortable. The Hongjun Emperor Heaven was a powerful existence that subdued the three pure ones. Who was the leader of the mystic door? The mystic door could not tolerate the Emperor Heaven anymore. Not to mention the others, even the people of the mystic door almost beat the brains out of the three pure ones' heads. If the Jade Pure Heaven was the highest, the Shang Pure Heaven was the second, and the Grand Pure Heaven was the last, the Grand Supreme in action did not care. But how could the Grand Supreme Dara not care? How could Zhao Gongming not care if the senior brother of the clan of enlightenment ran above the patriarch of the clan of Jia? Dara of the mystic door might not care about his own honor or disgrace. But how many Dara could let go of the honor or disgrace of the patriarch and the sect? Except for Dara, who had turned into a primordial spiritual treasure, no one would not care. Therefore, the mystic door's willingness to support their own heaven realm was not firm, and the heaven realm was not their core interest. Most of them wanted to use it as an exchange of interest to divide the support of other powerful divines. The remaining few ideas of the heaven realm were the ones that could really be realized. For example, the nine heavens realm proposed by Emperor Jun would divide the talents into 9 levels, and the 9 heavens would dominate the untainted land. The 9 heavens had always been the orthodoxy of the untainted land, which had been established many times in the previous Pangu era. The 9 heavens realm proposed by Shun Xiao, a rising star among the powerful divines, was also an alternative variation of this solution. However, Shun Xiao's cultivation was too short, and his foundation was not stable. He would probably integrate his Xian bead into the heaven realm of Emperor Jun, seeking common ground while reserving differences in exchange for a small concession from Emperor Jun. At the same time, he would give up coveting the throne of the Emperor of Heaven and become a supporter of Emperor Jun. Emperor Hong, or Emperor Jiang of the 12 ancestors of sorcery, or the 9 fields of heaven proposed by the human sovereign Yellow Emperor Xian Yuan, were another way of thinking. The heaven was not divided into high and low, but was divided into 8 central directions: east, west, south, and other 8 directions. At that time, Emperor Hong, who ruled the central great heaven, would be Hongjun, which meant that the Emperor of Heaven who ruled the great heaven would be the Emperor of Heaven, and the other 8 heavens would protect the great heaven, which would be ruled by other Emperors of Heaven. If someone else became the Emperor of Heaven, of course, he would have to worry about losing power, but Emperor Hong did not have to worry, because his son was also the Emperor of Heaven, his grandson was also the Emperor of Heaven, and his great-grandson was the Emperor of Heaven. The later Emperor of Heaven were all his descendants. The Yellow Emperor was the ancestor of the 5 emperors. Zhuanxiu, Emperor Ku, Emperor Yao, Emperor Shun, Emperor Yu, Xin Xiao, and Xiaohao were all his descendants, including Dara, who had the potential to become the Emperor of Heaven. Emperor Hong's advantage was that he was the most influential and the strongest Emperor of Heaven. When the other Emperors of Heaven ruled, they had to worry about the conflict between the leaders of the human tribe and the Emperor of Heaven after the rise of the human tribe. But Emperor Hong did not need to worry, because the human tribe was his foundation, and the future generations of the human tribe would not have any law or principle to challenge his rule. This was the greatness of the human tribe. But when Emperor Hong set the number of days, there were still obstacles for the future Emperor of Heaven, and the obstacles were quite big. It was hard to say what the other human tribe Dara would think, But the non-human tribe Dara would definitely try to stop it, and the three pure ones would not let such a strong Emperor of Heaven ascend the throne. When Emperor Hong ascended the throne, would the mystic door or the Emperor of Heaven Hongjun be the rightful ruler of the heaven and earth? 2 years ago, the three pure ones were suppressed by Emperor Hong, and it was hard enough. At that time, they accidentally let Emperor Hong establish Great Heaven and then rule the untainted land. In the end, he suppressed them for an entire untainted land era, and they still had a headache when they heard the name Hongjun. River Styx thought carefully and arranged all the causes and effects clearly. Lady Hutu set up the rotation of the 4 seasons for her own benefit. She wanted the heavenly Tao to follow the earth Tao, and the rotation of the 4 seasons was not constant. This kind of naked proposal to make heaven the vassal of earth is almost impossible to succeed. Dara, who aspires to be the Emperor of Heaven, and Dara, who is subordinate to the Emperor of Heaven, as well as the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the human tribe, will not agree. Heaven is higher than earth, heaven is yang, and earth is yin. This is the general trend of the untainted land, and it is not something that Hutu can change alone. Looks like Lady Hutu is sick of the method of matching earth with heaven and Emperor of Heaven with Huda. After all, using heaven to rule earth during the ancient god era was a symbol of the rise of male gods and the end of the goddess era. Hutu is the Mother Earth god, and she was once Pangu. This proposal is probably a test to elevate Mother Earth to the same position as the Emperor of Heaven. Unfortunately, the era of the Mother Earth god with a snake body of Een is over. Now, it is the era of the Heavenly Father Emperor with a dragon body of Yang. Not to mention herself, even Empress Hua, who is subordinate to the Mother Earth god, will not agree to this proposal. As River Styx had expected, the 36 heavens and 33 heavens of the Buddhist sect and the mystic door in the Purple Cloud Palace were quickly suppressed by Dara, who successively threw their Xian beads. Just as they were about to fall into the dust, they were called back by the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and Sakyamuni. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning did not move, but Sakyamuni had a good temper and was still smiling. It was as if he did not care about being rejected by the orthodox of the untainted land. Next, the Xian bead that Ro and the Buddhist sect had raised was knocked to the ground like trash. Ro was so angry that she scolded loudly. Obviously, the Dara sneered at the ambition of the Buddhist sect and the Devil sect and did not give them any face. The other proposals that were not from the great divine arts were quickly swallowed and swept away. If one did not become a great divine arts, one could forget about being the protagonist of the untainted land. What the great divine arts meant was, you can put forward any suggestions you have. If one is accepted, I will lose. Then there was Shun Zhao's proposal, which was swallowed by the Emperor Jun. The Xian bead was swallowed into the 9 heavens and evolved into the 9 heavens vital energy. The matriarch of the West and the Tai deity worked together to evolve the chaos heaven model of the 33 layers of the Big Dipper atmosphere. It could be considered as seeking common ground while reserving differences. The 2 Xian beads also became one sky. As for the Emperor Hong, the Xian bead of the 9 fields in the sky was raised by dozens of Dara together. Its momentum was the strongest. It occupied the center of the hall of the Purple Cloud Palace and evolved into a boundless heaven realm, covering the untainted land. In the center was the Great Heaven, then the Eastern Heaven, the Northeast Changing Heaven, the North Black Heaven, the Northwest Dark Heaven, the West Heaven, the Southwest Vermilion Heaven, the South Fire Heaven, and the Southeast Yang Heaven guarded the Central Heaven. Each of them was ruled by a great emperor. As time passed, the Dara raised the Xian beads in their hands one by one. Most of them landed in the 9 fields, followed by the 9 heavens. Even the Chaos Heaven, raised by the Matriarch of the West, and the Tai deity was suppressed to the side. As the Dara voted one by one, the Dara who did not vote at the scene gradually became conspicuous, especially the demon ancestor River Styx. If he did not put in the Xian bead, the Dara of the demonic path who was blocked by him would not dare to stand out. Although Ro's influence was still there, who did not know that River Styx did things without paying attention to the methods he used. These Darrow were all threatened by River Styx. They had long been warned not to take sides easily. River Styx was not the kind of righteous gentleman who would not bully the weak. As the matriarch of Niwa and the Saint Emperor Fuxi jointly raised 2 Xian beads and landed in the Emperor Hong's 9 fields. The Emperor Hong's 9 fields of heaven suppressed the 9 heavens. The matriarch of Niwa pretended that her hand had slipped, and a Xian bead that represented her tilted with the 9 fields, smashing onto the Chakravarti of Goddess Hutu. Goddess Hutu had a great reputation after all. Although not many Dara threw their Xian beads at her, they had unintentionally provoked her and dropped the Chakravarti of the Chakravarti, humiliating her. Only matriarch Niwa did not care. Sister Hutu, the heavenly Tao, is constant and supreme. How can you change according to the 4 seasons of the primordial world? Furthermore, you are the supreme Mother Earth. Why are you interfering with the matters of the heaven realm? Could it be that you are not enough to fight for Pangu, and you still want to become one with heaven and earth and become a female emperor of heaven? Because Goddess Hutu was discovered by Mother Earth, virtue, and earth, she looked like an amiable woman. Compared to matriarch Niwa's image, she looked slightly older. She was infuriated by matriarch Niwa's repeated calls of sister. She thought to herself, "You little slut, you have achieved the Tao before me. You're the second Pangu after Torch Dragon, yet your image is so young. You are really shameless." She immediately shouted, "Who are you talking about, sister?" Back then, sister was also from the Een form lineage of our goddess. When sister was proving Pangu, sister was guided by sister, and thus became Mother Earth. Now, sister doesn't strive for our goddess. Instead, you are standing on the side of their male gods. All the goddesses in the world are relying on us to avoid the ups and downs of their boorish male gods. Even if sister doesn't plan for them, why would you betray your birth? Matriarch Niwa smiled. Their male gods are fighting for power. What does that have to do with our goddess? They can fight for this world if they want to, right? I only care about protecting all living beings. As a mother, of course, I don't care about my children fighting for their futures. As a mother, I just need to support them. Sister, on the other hand, instead of nurturing all living beings, you think about snatching other people's children every day. The smell of gunpowder between the two grew stronger. River Styx and the rest of the humans didn't dare to make a sound. These two were mothers. They couldn't afford to offend them. Of course, they knew why the 2 mother gods fell out. Wasn't it because of the creation of humans? Hutu and Niwa were the 2 mother gods of the human race. It could be said that the human race originated from the earth, and also from the creation of goddess Niwa. In the beginning, the 2 mother gods supported the era of the mother gods together. But when the post-celestial beings overthrew the era of the ancient gods, they diverged. Hutu saw all living beings on the earth as her children, treating them all equally. She was endlessly compassionate, be it the post-celestial beings or the post-celestial beings. Goddess Niwa, on the other hand, wasn't so benevolent. She only loved the descendants she created. Therefore, when the human race was enlightened by the Buddhism of the mystic door and started to rise, the 2 mother gods' attitudes diverged. Later on, the human race struggled and even sacrificed countless lives to kill off the post-celestial beings, suppressing the post-celestial beings, and standing tall among the primordial races. At that time, Empress Wa, who fully supported the human race, gradually had more influence than Mother Earth Hutu. She even personally transformed into the human race and became the leader of the Huashu family, becoming one of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the human race. After that, the legend of Mother Earth creating humans gradually disappeared. In the legend of the creation of the human race, Mother Earth became a handful of soil in the hands of Goddess Niwa. How could Hutu tolerate this? She took advantage of the fact that the 12 great divine arts practitioners and the 3 clear ones were fighting for Pangu, preparing to create humans on her own. When Empress Wa heard the news, the 2 of them fell out. Even though River Styx promised the 3 clear ones to support Goddess Niwa in exchange for Fuxi giving up the river diagram, he didn't dare to express his stance in front of Hoodoo. Therefore, after exchanging a few conditions with Di Hong, he raised his Xian bead, wrapped it with a grand luo of the Devil Tao, and threw it into the 9 wild heavens. Immediately, the 9 wild heavens suppressed all the Xian beads and rose up high. It became the orthodox of the heavenly Tao. Supreme One God sighed when he saw the situation and merged his own chaotic heaven into it. After Pangu split open the heaven, the clear air would rise into the heaven and become one. When the Emperor of Heaven was born, he would be in the center and divide the 9 wild heaven and earth, ruling over the primordial world. Di Hong officially occupied the Great Luck and had the upper hand in the fight for the throne in the future. Even if Di Hong hadn't given River Styx the conditions, he would have leaned towards Di Hong. After all, he was the Yellow Emperor Xian Yuan, his ancestor. Furthermore, he represented the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the human race. The human race was also the biggest interest group in primordial Dara. To put it bluntly, Di Hong, the ancient emperor of heaven, the human sovereign of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the Yellow Emperor who lived in Xianyuan Hill and built his capital Yoxiong tribe, the Yellow Emperor who had the virtue of earth, the ancestor of humanity, the emperor who controlled the center, the founder of Taoism. The emperors after the human race were the ancestors of my descendants, the Dara who created almost all the surnames. To put it bluntly, all the human Dara present had to call me ancestor. Shenong seemed to have some objections to this. Although it was a bit exaggerated to say that all the human Dara should call him ancestor, it was not excessive for 80% of the human Dara to call him ancestor. Even River Styx and Lousy had to call him ancestor, not to mention the other juniors. Only the Grand Elder severed the relationship with Lousy and was no longer the future incarnation of Lousy. Otherwise, he would also come down and call him ancestor. Although Di Hong, and Yellow Emperor were not actually the same person, they could be regarded as the same person. They were all sub-accounts of Xian Yuan. Even Di Jun was a sub-account of Yellow Emperor 2 Pangu eras ago. It was an era when Xian Yuan ruled everything for Hong Jun. It was an era that made the 3 pure ones feel ashamed when they thought of it. Di Hong was not surnamed Di, and his given name was Hong. Instead, he was a heavenly emperor named Hong. Di Jun was a heavenly emperor named Jun. Those who were preceded by Di were heavenly emperors. Both Di Hong and Di Jun used to be the most ancient world. They were the leaders of the ancient gods during the untainted land. Long before 3 pure ones ruled the world, even before the rise of the human tribe, they were already emperor of heaven. In a sense, they were the representatives of the 2 orthodoxies of emperor of heaven. In the Pangu era, when the ancient gods ruled the world, there was a legend that Di Hong was the son of Di Jun. In fact, it referred to the legend that the orthodoxy of Di Jun, the emperor of heaven, was replaced by Di Hong. Now, Di Jun and Di Hong were not the Di Jun and Di Hong of the ancient gods. After the postnatal creatures overpowered the innate ancient gods, the orthodoxies of Di Jun and Di Hong were taken by Dara. Their former master was in the Purple Cloud Palace. Di Jun was the title of Emperor of Heaven ruled by the Tai God. Di Hong was the title of Emperor of Heaven ruled by the Central Chaos Emperor. Now, Di Jun was replaced by Emperor Hao Tian, and the title of Di Hong was given to Yellow Emperor Xian Yuan. However, Di Jun and Di Hong still retained some characteristics of the real bodies of the ancient gods. Di Jun had 3 bodies and Di Hong had 4. Chapter 1231. The great mediums in the Purple Cloud Palace all retained some of the golden legacy of the ancient god era. Shenong had the head of a bull and the body of a human. Emperor Shi had the head of a human and the body of a dragon. Emperor Hua had the body of a human and the body of a snake. Emperor Hong had 4 faces on his head, and Emperor Jun had 3 bodies. The great Emperor of Chaos did not have 7 apertures. This was because during the ancient god era, the appearance of the human race had not become the main Dharma form of the Daoyuo. Torch Dragon was the first Pangu among the ancient gods, so the ancient gods mostly ruled the world with the body of a dragon. Empress Hua was the second leader of the ancient gods. She and Mother Earth, Goddess Hutu, overthrew the era of the dragon god with the body of a snake, ushering in the era of the goddess. In this era, the postnatal living beings, including humans, were created on a large scale. The legend of goddess Nviwa, creating humans, originated from this. However, goddess Hutu, who created humans together with goddess Nviwa, was only left with a handful of soil. After Empress Wa, Hutu was also Pangu for a short time. After the era of the goddess ended, Fuxi inherited the era of the dragon god and combined with goddess Nviwa. The two symbolized the change of yin and yang, the mating of the dragon and the snake. Since then, Empress Wa became the symbol of Fuxi's yin side. The era of the goddess ended, and the era of the male god rose. Empress Wa had her own consort and brother, Fuxi. This was also why goddess Hutu was dissatisfied with Empress Wa. She was even more hostile to Fuxi. The era of the male god changed from Fuxi's paternal god to an imperial god. The contamination of the postnatal living beings turned the natural god into an imperial god. The civilization of the postnatal living beings began to influence the ancient gods. The Tai god was the first to establish the celestial court and become Pangu as the Emperor Heaven, Emperor June. The position of Emperor Heaven was constantly transferred among the ancient gods. Chaos Emperor, Emperor Sha, Emperor Hua, and other ancient gods became Pangu one after another and began to dominate the eras. The postnatal living beings gradually began to imitate the innate skills of the innate gods because of the intermingling of humans and gods. The cultivation civilization began to sprout, the sacrificial class began to develop in the direction of cultivators, and the postnatal living beings gradually became chaotic gods and joined the celestial court. Postnatal life forms that had reached the primal chaos god-fiend realm were assimilated by the ancient gods. With the birth of Laozi, another kind of cultivation ideology different from that of the gods began to sprout. The human race began to rise, and in Laozi's generation, he became the most accomplished. The war between the humans and the gods, the innate life forms and the acquired life forms engaged in a tragic war. Laozi attained the Tao of the chaotic fiend god, but he wasn't assimilated by the ancient gods. Instead, he used the great Tao that he had comprehended to reverse the reality. The acquired life forms, who had been slaughtered by the innate life forms and could only struggle to survive under the protection of the great mediums like Emperor Hua and Emperor Shi, began to have their own great mediums. Laozi cut down the Tao, and the Taishang was born from the Tao. The two leaders of the ancient Gajua Ran were the heavenly king of primordial beginning and the heavenly king of Lingbao. The three pure ones were born. After the establishment of the immortal Tao, the ancient gods began to decline. The immortal Tao identified the chaos god-fiends as their foundation and defined the chaos god-fiends as Dara. The immortal Tao civilization began to pass through its period of obscurity and officially began to develop. The three pure ones and the ancient gods reached a balance, and postnatal life forms officially rose to power. The ancient rulers who led the human race in resisting the Khanate life forms all vindicated their Taos. The three pure ones vindicated Pangu and began to support the rulers of the human race, including the leaders of the ancient gods who protected the human race during the ancient god era, and the rulers of the human race who led the human race to resist against the Khanate life forms. They were known as the Three Sovereigns and Five Emperors. In the next Pangu era, the three pure ones began to create their own immortal Tao civilization. However, they imitated the path of the ancient gods, causing a major flaw in the path of Dara. Dara, who was a postnatal life form, began to lose its Taos. The human race, which tried to occupy the golden age of the primordial great Tao, which had not been broken after the primordial era was established, suffered heavy losses. A human elite from the primordial era turned into a primordial spiritual treasure. Affected by this, the three pure ones no longer directly ruled the primordial era. They established the orthodoxy of the mystic door and educated the immortal Tao Dara. The rulers of the human race, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, seized the authority of the primordial era and began to rule the primordial era as the Emperor of Heaven. The hegemony of the human race was initially established. The Buddhism, which had always been a sect rather than a ruler of the primordial era, began to rise among the postnatal life forms. The primordial era began to enter the enlightenment of the mystic door and the Buddhism. In the era of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the rulers of the ancient gods also recovered and joined the game of the primordial era. According to the history of the primordial era, river Styx brought in the Dara of the Purple Cloud Palace one by one and analyzed their interests, camps, and attitudes. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were the orthodoxy of the human race, and the human race was the overlord of the primordial era. So this was the orthodoxy of the primordial era. The 3 pure ones and the Buddhism were rooted in the human race, but they did not favor only one race, so they could not represent the orthodoxy of the human race. The 3 pure ones were the nobles of Pangu, the orthodoxy of the primordial era. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were the orthodoxy of the human race. As the overlords of the primordial era, the orthodoxy of the human race and the orthodoxy of the primordial era merged, forming the most powerful orthodoxy of the primordial era. However, there were differences of interest among them. Among the 3 pure ones, Ling Bao taught everyone without discrimination, and he took the initiative to accept the ancient gods and other postnatal life forms into the mystic door. The primordial era insisted on the civilization of the immortal Tao, which was rooted in the civilization of humanity. Therefore, although the primordial era did not care about one's background, the foreign species under him would be assimilated, or in other words, immortalized. The Taishang did not do anything, but from the perspective of the Dara under the Taishang, they had the highest proportion of the human race. The difference between the orthodoxy of the human race of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors and the mystic door was the conflict of ideas between the races and sections. Generally speaking, the two had the same interests. After all, after so many Pangu eras, conflicts had erupted long ago. Now, the two had entered the stage of living like an old married couple. There were endless small conflicts and bumps, but they could still live together. They were an old married couple. Not only did the mystic door and the human race have conflicts, but even the orthodoxy of the human race also had conflicts. There were also conflicts among the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. The 3 sovereigns who protected the human race in the era of the ancient gods and even reincarnated to lead the human race, rose in the war between the connate life forms and the human race, and led the human race to survive through hardships, to victory and rise, and even became one of the founders of the immortal Tao cultivation civilization, the rulers of the human race, the 5 emperors. There were also internal conflicts. Most of the 3 sovereigns were ancient gods who cared for the human race. They were the leaders and protectors of the human race during the difficult period of ignorance. The 5 emperors were the power of the human race itself during the time of war. They were the leaders who led the human race to rise during the period of blood and fire. The 3 sovereigns were ancient gods. The 5 emperors were the Emperor of Heaven. The 3 sovereigns were ancient gods with different ideologies and styles, while the 5 emperors were the Emperor of Heaven of the Xinyuan bloodline. During the time of war, the human race had to be closely united, so the 5 emperors had Xinyuan of the Emperor Hongdi as the core. The 3 sovereigns and the 5 emperors maintained an unbroken relationship, and together they represented the orthodoxy of the human race. During this complicated period, there was the Pangu era, when Emperor Hongdi ruled Great Heaven, the birth of Hongjun, the unification of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, and the orthodoxy of the human race suppressed the mystic door. There was also the situation where the mystic door manipulated the human race, deposed the Emperor of Heaven at every turn, manipulated the human race, and forced the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors to retreat to the fire cloud cave. There was even the revival of the ancient gods, who ruled over all living beings, treated the human race and the 100 races equally, cut off the connection between the earth and heaven, established the rule of the path of gods, and re-established the historical trend. This meant that the primordial world was merging amidst the conflict, entering a historical period of constant conflict, but the general interest was balanced and peaceful. After understanding the history of the Pangu eras before the primordial world, one could understand the current situation. Why did Lady Hutu oppose the three pure ones? And why did the Dijiangshi and Yinzi clans of the human race stand on the side of Hutu's witchcraft ancestors? Why did Gomong, Zhurong, Rushu, Gonggong, and Xianming, who had a close relationship with the human race and were worshipped by the human race, join the 12 witchcraft ancestors? Because Hutu was originally the orthodox god of the human race, but because of the problem of choosing sides during the time of war, she was cleverly deprived of the myth of creating humans by Empress Hua. Therefore, the subtle relationship between the human race's orthodoxy and the three pure ones, and even the subtle relationship between the 5 emperors and the 3 sovereigns, were the reasons for this subtle situation. Of course, the human race was plotting for the orthodoxy of the primordial world and the position of the orthodoxy of Pangu. But because of the relationship of the mystic door, this plot had to be restrained to a certain extent to avoid the 2 sides really falling out. Therefore, the human race and Hutu joined forces to fight for the orthodox position of Pangu, and Hutu's idea of fighting for the myth of creating humans and the karmic title of the Holy Mother was also connived by the 5 emperors. Hutu created the congenital human race with the body of Pangu, so that she could legitimately occupy the golden age of the primordial living beings in the primordial world. The human race also had the primordial origin and foundation, and became the orthodox race of Pangu. After the primordial world was broken, the primordial human race will be transformed into post-celestial beings. In this way, the human race would dominate the entire timeline, and it would not be necessary for the mortal primordial living beings to occupy the historical timeline before the creation of humans, or even before the primordial world was broken, which would bring obstacles to the rise of the human race. Also, it would not give the Tai God and the others a chance to seize the position of Emperor Heaven. But because the myth of the creation of humans belonged to the Holy Mother, Emperor Hong could not say this out. After all, he could not directly stand up and support Hutu to regain the position of the Holy Mother. This was related to the dispute between Empress Enviwa and Hutu. Therefore, the bloodline of the 5 emperors could only rely on Hutu in this secret way. They dared not stand up and support her directly, which would make the bloodline of the 3 emperors lose face. After all, the unity of the human race was still very important. This was the delicate relationship between the 3 emperors, the 5 emperors, the mystic door, and Hutu. It was difficult to see the situation clearly without figuring out the historical problems between them. The key now was the fight between the ancestor of sorcery and the mystic door over the orthodoxy of Pangu, and the fight between Hutu and goddess Nviwa over the myth of creating humans. The ancient gods also had a plan. They did not stand on the side of the human race in the war between the primordial living beings and the post-celestial beings, so the fruits of victory had nothing to do with them. Now, the human race had its own orthodox gods to worship. Tai and Chaos could still maintain their influence, but the ancestral gods of many primordial living beings and the ancient gods who had always stood on the side of the primordial living beings, such as Torch Dragon, were very uncomfortable. However, after the rise of the human race, not only the primordial living beings, but also the post-celestial races were oppressed by the human race, and their living space was squeezed. The ancient gods were seeking for the union of the primordial living beings and the post-celestial races. Their plan was to let the primordial living beings become the ancestors of the post-celestial races, and the primordial divine beasts and the primordial gods become the ancestors of the other races, completing the union. The reason why the bloodline of the 5 emperors produced the plan of the primordial human race was also related to the overt plot of the ancient gods. The plan of the primordial ancient gods was to create a race that could compete with the human race. This race could only be the union of the 10,000 races of the untainted land. They could only try to solve the complicated conflicts between these races. It was extremely difficult to combine countless races into one. So they had to create a common consciousness of the race. This consciousness could only be to resist the hegemony of the human race. The 10,000 races of the untainted land united. Resist the oppression of the human race together. This was the plan of the demon race. There was no demon race in the world. The demon race was a false concept. There were many different races, and they had complicated relationships and food chains. Were the cows and tigers the same race? Impossible. Therefore, only under the oppression of the human race could these races, which had become the food of the human race and were bullied and enslaved, unite. Humans came first, and then there was the concept of non-humans. Non-humans were rejected and degraded by the human race, and then there was the demon race. Using the hands of the human race to create a demon race that was a union of 10,000 races. This was the plan of the ancient gods. The fuse of the competition between the sorcerers and demons was buried in this meeting in the Purple Cloud Palace. This conflict had long been buried when the human race had been the hegemon. River Styx observed calmly, matching the history of the lower part of the timeline with the current situation. He could see everything clearly from his side. After the competition, one proposal after another was put forward. The untainted land is broken, and the vitality is degraded. There will be 3 major disasters, which will cause the primordial innate vitality to be converted to the post-celestial. The primordial Lord of Heaven knocked on the jade bell in his hand and said, "The first disaster will be the collapse of Mount Bujo. The breaking of the ancestral root of the untainted land is an important part of the general trend." Emperor Hong raised his head, looked at the few pre-world living beings, gave a cold smile, and said, "The untainted land is affected by our great Tao, which is not good for Dara to attain the Tao. Of course, the earlier it breaks, the better. This time, we won't wait for Zhuanqiu to ascend to the throne." Gong gong. Emperor Hong pointed at the vanguard of the human race, who had broken the untainted land, and said, "This time, please fight with my friend Zhu Rong and break Mount Bujo." Bullsh *T. Shang Yang stood up angrily and said, "You human beings don't cross the line. We can tolerate you breaking the untainted land, but you are getting more and more insatiable. Last time, when the humankind rose, you broke Mount Bujo fine. This time, you want to break Mount Bujo even before the humankind is born. If this goes on, will there be any land left for our descendants to live on? The timeline occupied by us pre-world living beings is only left with the creation of the world. You human beings are still forcing us. We will never allow it." Great Sage Shang Yang smashed his cup and shouted angrily. All the Xiantian life forms' ancestral gods stood behind Great Sage Shang Yang. Qingqiu Heavenly Fox asked the ancestral dragon gently, "Great Sage Shang Yang, stand up and say something." The ancestral dragon replied lazily, "What? Oh, break Mount Bujo. Isn't that good? If the world floods, my descendants will be able to reproduce for a few more generations. But what if too many places are flooded and too many pre-world living beings go extinct? What if there is nothing to eat?" The ancestral dragon propped up his head and said, "This is a difficult situation." The group of pre-world living beings almost spewed fire from their eyes. Who didn't know that the ancestral dragon was in cahoots with the humankind? But at this time, he was still a fence-sitter. The ancestral dragon had made a dirty deal with the humankind. The humankind would guarantee the reproduction of the dragonkind in the 4 seas and give the water to the dragonkind in order to win over the most powerful pre-world living beings. But the ancestral dragon was bought over just like that. Shameless old dragon. Many of the pre-world living beings were cursing in their hearts. "Ha ha, my friends, why do you have to do this? The primordial world needs tens of thousands of races to prosper together." Seeing that he had angered the pre-world ancient gods, the ancestral dragon stood up and smiled. "Come, my friends, let's have a toast." Behind the ancestral dragon, the Dara of the dragon race, all had unrestrained smiles on their faces. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes and looked extremely rich and powerful. The wealth of the dragon kind was not an exaggeration. The ancestral chi around the dera of the dragon race formed layers upon layers of palaces. The palaces were so magnificent that the pre-world ancient gods were heartbroken. The dragon kind now no longer had the ferocity and vigor of the strongest pre-world living beings in the past. Their cultivation had long been interrupted during the war with the humankind. Then, they were fed by the humankind with abundant resources and luxuries. Without the support of the dragon kind, the pre-world ancient gods could hardly resist the trend. After a few words of argument, a Xiang Lu great sage said to River Styx in grief and indignation, "Taoist River Styx, when Mount Buzhou falls, your Netherblood Sea will be the first to suffer. Ancestor, can't you spare a thought for the Azura tribe?" River Styx laughed and said, "Sakya forced the Azura tribe on me, or else I wouldn't want it. You should say this to Taoist Ro. Anyway, I have decided to make Azura a branch of the demonic cult, the great Azura demonic cult. In the future, we still need to cultivate pillars from the humankind. If you want to talk about the spirit of the devil cult, the human race is more in line with it. Greed, obsession, anger, love, hate, affection, hatred, the mortal world, the 7 emotions, and 6 desires. They are truly the pillars of our devil cult. A mere Azura clan, low grade, low grade. As for desires and distracting thoughts, how can the pre-world living beings compare to the post-world living beings? A demonic Dara snickered. Mingi remained calm and collected. He was a great divine ability of the human tribe. The ancient gods must be dreaming if they wanted him to support connate life forms. Soon, the motion ended with the complete victory of the humankind. Next was River Styx's proposal. Nanming Ruins of Returning. Chapter 1232. After the chaos was divided, there was the heaven, earth, and water chi, which created human relationships and nourished all living things. Humans followed the same principles. They were known as the Sanjiao and Sandan Tian to nourish the body and generate divine chi. A wisp of Xianming ancestral chi flew up from River Styx's head and transformed into a cloud. It landed on the purple cloud palace and began to demonstrate its great Tao of water. River Styx also began to talk about the primordial worldview that he was responsible for. I want to rebuild the water element and create the great water circulation for the primordial world. The primordial Lord of Heaven shook the jade symbols in his hands and said, "My friend, please speak." River Styx's idea was to raise the great Tao of water of the 5 elements in the primordial world to the origin of the heaven, earth, and water universe. Clear chi rose to the sky and turbid chi sank to the ground. Heaven and earth were everything in the primordial world. Only water circulated between heaven and earth to create all changes in life. He wanted to raise his own dharma and obtain status in the primordial world. Originally, water was only one of the 5 elements. River Styx had to compete with Xianming, Gong, and even Kuan Peng, who favored the great Tao of water. Although the 5 elements were the material foundation of the primordial world and one of the origin of the universe, the 5 elements had 5 attributes. It was not as nourishing as the great Tao of 3 elements. Other than the heaven and earth, there was only water. Furthermore, River Styx had other plans. Gong was in charge of the water of the 5 elements. Xianming was in charge of the water of the 4 seasons and the water of the moon. Even the water of the mystic door had many Dara from the mystic door. The water of the moon was Wang Shu, the water of the wind and rain. The water of the Del cycle of heaven and earth also had the Rainmaster, and the water of the 4 seas had the dragon race. There were too many Dara in the water cake. Even if River Styx was the strongest among them, he had to compete with others. He had to snatch Dara from Gong, Xianming, Rainmaster, and the dragon race. Only then could he occupy the great Tao of water of the primordial world and gain a foothold for himself. And this competition was not limited to this primordial world. It was endless. Until the end of the primordial world, he had to compete with these great Tao players. This is too troublesome. Furthermore, It would be detrimental to River Styx's dignity and dignity. If he got involved in this battle, he would probably lose most of his energy. How would River Styx be able to play games or cause trouble? Happily, then. That was why River Styx had long been prepared to transcend the struggle for the great Tao. He would not challenge the existing interest groups. Instead, he would expand the pie and break the balance of interests in the primeval world. He would then divert Dara's attention. To put it bluntly, he would not be a barbarian who would recklessly barge into the existing interest groups. Instead, through the combination of vertical and horizontal lines, they could affect and disrupt the original structure on a large scale. One was to go to the deep pool alone and be in the center of the vortex. The other was to muddy the entire pool of water in the primordial world so that he could fish in the muddy water. One way was to boldly barge into an unfamiliar place. With the size of River Styx, every move it made would affect the interests of others, and it would suffer from backlash. The other way was to completely muddy the waters and destroy the original structure. It was to let the twists and turns and make things messy before stepping in. It was obvious which was the better choice. Of course, even if he did this, River Styx would still be drawn into the center of the vortex. However, this time, the vortex was larger and more people were drawn in. These people would draw in each other, and River Styx would be able to rise above the others. Once he had caught enough fish, River Styx would be confident that he could use his fist to bring his own interest ashore from the muddy water and watch the show instead. Kuan Peng had said that River Styx was a sh*t stirrer. It was not an exaggeration. River Styx was now stirring vigorously in the huge sh*t jar that was the primordial worldview. Hearing River Styx's ideas and demonstration, many Dara revealed disgusted expressions. The great Tao of water is the primordial world's great circulation of vitality. To establish the primordial world's metabolism system, one must first establish the great circulation of heaven and earth. Originally, clear and turbid qi were distinct. It was not easy for the qi to remain unchanged and not flow in the world. The clear and turbid qi used the water primordial world as the circulation system, causing the entire qi activity of the primordial world to flow. As the saying goes, when there is air, there will be life, and when there is air, there will be death. River Styx was like an entrepreneur who sold his PowerPoint presentation to investors. He praised his idea of the great Tao of water as if it was a great loss to the primordial world if he did not adopt it. Fortunately, River Styx had real abilities. He was not the kind of entrepreneur who only relied on his mouth to cheat investors, or the Indians in Silicon Valley who only boasted about their achievements. The water primordial world circulation of heaven and earth was made up of the Milky Way, River Styx, the rivers on the earth, and the eye of the sea and the four seas. These 5 rivers formed the circulation of the primordial world, the interaction of qi activity, and the flow of vitality. Constantly cleaning up the heavy waste in the primordial world made the qi activity of heaven and earth flow more vigorously. The primordial world looked healthier as a whole. It was indeed beneficial to the continuation of the primordial world. But the only problem was, but we don't intend to continue the primordial world. Goddess Empress Enviwa interrupted River Styx's boasting with interest. Great sage Shang Yang also sneered and said, "What ancestor said is indeed useful for the continuation of the primordial world. It is also of great help to connate living beings like us." But, ancestor, aren't you a postnatal living being? Ancestor's devil path still needs postnatal humans as pillars. Ancestral Gragon found it interesting. In this way, the primordial world can nourish more living beings. Moreover, after the creation of the world, the primordial world will soon become fertile. In this way, for us dragons, the fertile period will become longer. Ancestral Gragon could not help but swallow his saliva as he thought of the chewy, fat, and delicious beasts after the creation of the world. The primordial world is destined to be broken. Ancestor's idea is not bad, but it is unnecessary to make such a big move for a short-lived Khanate era. Emperor Hong sat upright. Anyway, The primordial world had to be broken. Anything beneficial to the primordial world was superfluous. Anyway, the human tribe was not suitable to live in the rich Khanate era. The human tribe was used to being poor. Sorry, I'm not used to living in a comfortable place. When Dara attained the Tao, the poorer the better. It would be best if the whole primordial world was barren and unruly. Then, the human tribe could occupy the world. To put it bluntly, Khanate living beings were all trash in the low-level postnatal environment. With a thought from Mingi, the structure of the untainted continent, evolved by the water ancestor Chi, was broken by an external force. Countless untainted worlds evolved into the myriad heavens and realms, but these countless fragments were still contained in a huge, metaphysical, and integral cycle, forming a brand new world system, the myriad heavens and realms. The specific water element cycle of the primordial world, which connected all parts, was not destroyed with the primordial world. Instead, after the primordial world was broken, it contained all the fragments and continued to maintain a huge universal cycle. On the contrary, Taoist Hongdi, for the primordial world, the water element great cycle was just the icing on the cake. But after the primordial world was broken, this great cycle became even more important. After the primordial world was broken, there were countless worlds, big and small. As Taoist Sakya said, there were 3,000 boundless worlds. Each boundless world had 3,000 medium-class worlds, and each medium-class world had 3,000 small-class worlds. The number of small-class worlds was as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. In this way, the connection between the fragments of the primordial world was weak, like the corpses of the primordial world. The primordial world was broken to break the great Tao after the creation of the world, to prevent the Tao from contaminating Dara, who had attained the Tao. It was to weaken our influence on the new Dara to the greatest extent, so that new chaotic gods and demons could be born and use their great Tao to perfect the primordial world's great Tao. Every primordial world in the Pangu era has been perfecting the great Tao's world evolution system. After the primordial world was broken, countless worlds continued to develop on the basis of the original primordial world, creating new principles. Just like the spiritual root that grew on the corpses of the old primordial world, it absorbed the fragments of our fruit of Tao and bloomed a new flower of cultivation civilization. And Dara was the fruit of this civilization. Then, Dara returned to us and participated in the next creation of the world. In this way, the corpses of the primordial world nourished the civilization of the postnatal creatures, which bloomed the flower of cultivation and bore the fruit of Dara. The fruit of Dara returned to the chaotic gods and demons, creating the world and recreating the primordial world. After the primordial world evolved from the primordial world, countless tiny fragments formed a world ocean that was as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River, the myriad world. These small worlds were relatively isolated, and the myriad world as a whole was hundreds of thousands of times larger than the primordial world. The huge space and the relatively isolated ecosystem gave rise to countless relatively closed world ecosystems, which in turn gave rise to countless famous civilizations of different forms and ideals. Among these civilizations, the luckiest ones, or those that were most affected by the primordial world before it was broken, sprouted the cultivation civilization. Then, in the most splendid cultivation civilizations, flowers of varying sizes, resplendent or dim blossomed. Among these flowers, only the most brilliant ones could bear a green fruit, which was the embryonic form of Dara. In order to nurture the fruit to ripen, those civilizations had to constantly absorb nutrients from the surrounding worlds and other civilizations. It looked like raising poisonous insects. In the embryonic form of Dara, those Tao Lords represented their own cultivation civilization to absorb the nutrients from the nearby fragmented worlds, constantly polishing and absorbing the fruit of Tao of other civilizations. In the end, a perfect fruit was born, and then the spiritual root fell, returning to the primordial world before the creation of the world, becoming the nutrients for the growth of the whole universe. The reason why after the primordial world was broken, The new world system was named the Myriad Worlds by Dara. It wasn't because there were only 10,000 minor worlds, but because there were countless primordial world fragments, and they were constantly being created. The myriad worlds are nothing more than a grain of sand in the realm sea. The reason why the myriad worlds is called the myriad worlds is because when Dara achieved the Tao, it basically had to experience the 10,000 nearby worlds and absorb the principles within them. Only then would it be able to form a Tao fruit that no one had before. On average, 10,000 worlds would be able to produce a single Dara. In reality, however, trillions of worlds might not even be able to produce a single new Tao fruit. Why is there such a huge waste of resources? River Styx gestured. Out of 10,000 primordial world fragments, only one can give rise to a civilization. Only 100 civilizations can give rise to the seeds of cultivation, and the number of grand cultivators who can discover other worlds is less than 1 in 10,000 immortals who can cross the realm sea on their own. Out of 10 billion worlds, only one cultivator will be able to make contact with other worlds. How many of these cultivators will become Dara's seeds? This is the efficiency of using resources in an extensive system. Dara's unique Tao fruit requires an isolated cultivation ecosystem. However, an isolated cultivation ecosystem is not conducive to the growth of Dara. Therefore, we need a new circulation system to connect these isolated worlds in a new way. While maintaining the independent cultivation ecosystem, we can strengthen communication and exchange. This is the great circulation after the primordial world was broken, the great circulation of the myriad worlds. After listening to all of River Styx's ideas, Emperor Hong raised his eyebrows and said, "Interesting. What do you think, Taoist Emperor Shi? After the primordial world was broken, we have always let it go and not interfered. Because there are so many primordial world fragments, anything can happen, and any form of world can be produced. We only need to wait for a large enough sample to produce what we need." Fushi's idea was the chaotic algorithm. The infinite chaotic algorithm would definitely produce the result they wanted. If they interfered with the algorithm so that it was not chaotic, it'd be a good thing from the perspective of solving the problem. Human interference could produce more Dara. However, from the perspective of possibility, it was a bad thing. Because the orderly algorithm could never be compared to the infinite possibilities of chaos, interference would definitely destroy some possibilities. For great divines like them, what they wanted was not more grand heavenly immortals, but a more unique Dara, a Dara that contained a more wonderful side of the great Tao. Although there would be more Dara, it would be more unexpected. The possibility of Dara that exceeded their understanding was smaller. Therefore, it was difficult to distinguish the advantages and disadvantages of the two systems. However, at this time, Mingi added from another angle, fellow Taoist Fushi's idea is to change the number of changes. However, the destruction of the primordial world is a fixed number. It is just a small solution to seek change from a fixed number. Now that the primordial world's breaking is fixed, Dara has set the general trend, and there are fewer and fewer variables. And I am the variable of this Pango era. If fellow Taoists turn me into a fixed number, wouldn't that go against fellow Taoist Fushi's Tao of change? River Styx also persuaded Fushi from the perspective of the chaos algorithm. Fushi's idea was to increase the number of variables in the primordial world, so he opposed River Styx destroying the chaotic algorithm of the primordial world's breaking. However, River Styx refuted him. The primordial world's breaking was already an unchanging state. Due to the coupling of the great mystical abilities and interests, the primordial world's timeline changed less and less. River Styx was the biggest variable in the primordial world this time. His changes to the chaotic algorithm naturally limited the possibility of the Pango era, but from the reincarnation of the Pango era, it increased the possibility. This time, River Styx was not allowed to make major changes to the primordial world's history. Even if Fushi protected the post-celestial Dara's chaotic algorithm, there were fewer and fewer variables in the primordial world game. The innate and post-celestial 8 trigrams in Fushi's hands kept crossing and calculating for him. In the end, Fushi nodded and agreed with River Styx's idea of the great circulation of heaven and earth water element. After the primordial world broke, the three rivers and the Milky Way broke and became a water net that encompassed all heavens and worlds. In the purple cloud palace, the water ancestor Chi demonstrated the water element circulation that River Styx envisioned. At the top of the nine heavens' pure spiritual Chi, the impurities in the pure Chi sank and condensed into the nine heavens' weak water, which meandered down and became heavier. It passed through the heaven realm and turned into the Milky Way. The Milky Way and the Milky Way merged into the primordial world. During this process, the Milky Way turned into the essence of the sun and the moon, nourishing all living things on the primordial world. What flowed in the primordial world and the four seas was the Tiani true water. The Tiani true water was the mother of all water, turning into rivers and seas. The four seas circulated through the eye of the sea. After the Tiani true water evaporated, it turned into water clouds. At the same time, it received the weak water from the heaven realm. The weak water was absorbed by the Tiani true water and joined the water cycle on the land through rainfall. The Tiani true water seeped into the strata of the primordial world, constantly washing and cleaning the heavy and turbid Chi in the earth. Under the great pressure and the turbid Chi, it was refined into the first Yuan heavy water. The first Yuan heavy water gathered into an underground river. Because of its weight, it kept seeping downwards and finally flowed into the Yudu city of the underworld. It combined with the impurities in the primordial world and turned into the most filthy and dark connate true water, the Blood River true water. Finally, the Blood River true water merged into the Blood Sea. Through the great way of water of ancestor River Styx, it was purified, circulated, and flowed downwards. The Blood Sea and the blue sky underworld were two sides of the same coin. The filthy Blood River true water that flowed out of the Blood Sea was transformed into the blue sky underworld. Through the nine eye of the spring, it gave birth to the River Styx, which meandered across the land of the underworld. The River Styx washed part of the impurities into the underworld and nurtured the expansion of the underworld. The other part entered the earth and was nurtured and decomposed by the primordial world. Finally, it nourished the spiritual veins in the earth and produced clear spirit Chi again. Rising to the nine heavens, water was called moist. Dara, who was present, had sharp eyes. With one look, she could tell that the River Styx had hidden something in the water cycle. For example, the 9 types of innate true water. It was obvious that it had been specially created to bribe the community of interest. The River Styx had broken down the functions of the innate great way of water and created 9 types of innate true water with their own characteristics and functions. They were responsible for the water cycle. At the same time, they were also the embodiment of the power of the innate great way of water. It was equivalent to dividing the complete great way of water into 10 powers. It was used to bribe the almighty mediums who had suffered losses in the establishment of the water cycle. At the same time, it created a community of interest. Obviously, the 9 heavens weak water, Tiani true water, and first Yuan heavy water were the embodiment of the downwards characteristic of water. According to the density of the primordial substances, from clear spirit Chi to heavy spirit Chi, the density of the innate true water had to be different in order to continuously permeate downwards. In this process, the impurities in the primordial world were washed away and the overall cycle was established. Therefore, the weak water floated in the clear spirit Chi of the 9 heavens. The heavy water sank in the 9 earthly turbid Chi. The Tiani true water circulated in the primordial world. These 3 types of innate water were clear spirit water, heavy spirit water, and mother of all water. They shared the water cycle and the power of downwards with the great way of water. They were the innate true water that embodied the characteristics of water. Mastering the 9 heavens weak water would allow one to master the Milky Way. Mastering the first Yuan heavy water would allow one to master the earthly river. Mastering the Tiani true water would allow one to master the water cycle in the primordial world. This included the four seas, rivers, rain, and even water in the sky. The triple light holy water was the embodiment of the way of water nourishment. By turning the sun, moon, and stars into the triple light holy water, and extracting the essence of the sun and moon to nourish the primordial world, it was equivalent to designing a process of water participation in the power of the primordial sun and moon. It could be said that the river Styx was robbing the influence and power of the sun, moon, and stars. However, the river Styx had a sufficient excuse to use the innate true water as a medium to combine the sun and the moon to eliminate the poison of the sun and the coldness of the moon. It turned the originally violent chi of the sun and moon into a gentle atmosphere through the great way of water essence. This was equivalent to creating an atmosphere between the sun and moon as a buffer. Moreover, the river Styx was obviously not prepared to bear this pressure alone. The triple light holy water had existed before, but it had always been regarded as a primordial spiritual item and a treasure of creation. The sun, moon, and stars were the three treasures of heaven, and the essence, spirit, and spirit were the three treasures of man. The largest source of the triple light holy water was at the heavenly primogenitor's place. It was obvious that the river Styx wanted to give the heavenly primogenitor the power to control the essence of the sun and moon, so that the three treasures could have one more great way. This was a dirty deal that the river Styx used to try to buy the heavenly primogenitor's support. Similarly, the power of the Tiani true water was given to Gong Gong and the ancestral dragon. The nine heavens weak water was given to the future emperor of heaven. The first Yuan heavy water was given to Lady Hutu, and the Xianming true water was the water power of the cycle of the four seasons. It was also the cold side of the great way of water essence. Of course, it was given to the Xianming true water to buy his support. The blood river true water was left to him by the river Styx. The blue sky underworld symbolized the great cycle of heaven and earth. It and the blood river true water were two sides of the same coin. It was also the power that the river Styx used to meddle with the underworld. When the time came, the underworld and the blood sea were two sides of the same coin. The river Styx would be able to meddle with the reincarnation power that Rose River Styx incarnation had tried to meddle with. The Timelight true water was created for all realms. It was related to the construction of the great cycle of all realms in the future. The last type of innate true water was the virtue clean water. It was also the power that was divided to by the Buddhist sect. The transformation and characteristics of the 9 types of innate true water formed the great cycle of water essence that River Styx had envisioned. If the primordial water essence cycle was the 5 rivers and 4 seas, then after the primordial world was broken, there was only one core of the primordial water essence in all realms, and that was the ultimate. Chapter 1233. The majestic purple cloud palace seemed to be a world of its own. Countless space-time overlapped and flickered, forming an extremely large yet extremely small world. The palace of the great mediums was the world of ordinary living beings. The guests in the middle hall of the purple cloud palace were all chaotic god-fiend embryos formed from Daozu Qi. The true body of every great medium was a chaotic god-fiend in the process of being born. The bodies of these god-fiends were so huge that they were worlds. From the perspective of River Styx and the others, the Purple Cloud Palace was an ordinary palace hall. However, from Yuan Yu's perspective, the Purple Cloud Palace was the embryonic form of a multiverse. The great mediums inside were all embryos of universes. The chaotic god-fiend itself was a universe. The embryonic form of a universe was born from the innate chi. That was why Pangu, who had devoured 3,000 chaotic god-fiends, was able to create a chaotic god-fiend. Yuan Yu had been chased by a certain veteran, Dara. He had been on the run for more than half of the Taichu era. With the intentional or unintentional protection of some fellow Mystic Door members, he had barely managed to protect his chaotic god-fiend body. Even so, his chaotic god-fiend true body was half crippled. Fortunately, Zhao Gongming had taken the opportunity to bring him to the Purple Cloud Palace during the meeting, giving him some time to catch his breath. Without a complete chaotic god-fiend body, Yuan Yu's perspective of the Purple Cloud Palace was slightly different. He had two perspectives. One was the perspective of a weak, chaotic god-fiend embryo. He saw towering figures that were like god-fiends and the manifestation of the Great Tao. The three pure ones on the main seat were the three perspectives of the Great Tao. The Genesis, Mystic, and Three Chis were the source of the Great Tao. They made Yuan Yu feel like he was looking directly at the Great Tao. He had the urge to transform into the Great Tao. Patriarch River Styx's figure was an incomparably tall demonic shadow. It looked like a bottomless abyss and a chaotic whole universe entangled with River Styx. Emperor Shi and Emperor Wa were the source of yin and yang intertwined. It was an unimaginable Ouroboros. The body of the gigantic yin serpent was the manifestation of countless crystal walls. It was the manifestation of the incomparably huge yang universe dragon body. It was as if they had formed a universe model where yin and yang were constantly changing. However, the two Ouroboros were like the double helix of DNA. Their tails were intertwined, and this way of intertwining reflected a contradictory but interdependent duality. Yuan Yu could not describe the projection of the great path that he saw. Perhaps there was only one sentence that could describe the projection of the great path of Emperor Shi and Emperor Wa. Yin and yang were the way. Those who succeeded were good, and those who succeeded were their natures. And from the perspective of another non-chaos demigod demon, he saw countless universes. Every Dara was a universe, and some of them were universes that he could understand and even be on equal footing with. But those great mediums, those who called themselves Daozu, were all beyond Yuan Yu's imagination. Perhaps only the prehistoric universe that he caught a glimpse of when he traveled through time and returned to Tai could compare to them. Although the chaos fiend gods they had transformed into were still embryos, Yuan Yu had already seen countless mysterious and unfathomable worlds in them, as if the great Tao had manifested into a layered world. Only the embryonic form of the multiverse created by the combined efforts of the great mediums, like the Purple Cloud Palace, could bear the projection of the true bodies of countless chaotic god-fiends. If it was the myriad realm where Yuan Yu had attained the Tao, Yuan Yu could not help but smile bitterly. The aura of any great mediums here was the information and projection of a complete universe. If they manifested in the myriad realm, they only needed to project a finger or a scale to crush the fragile myriad realm. Tai was nothing. Creating something from nothing was the most difficult thing. That was why the Tai era could exist stably and become one of the 5 primordial manifestations. After the Dara pushed the flow of time, the Tai era began to have time and space. Once time and space were formed, the embryonic form of the matter between heaven and earth began to appear. The primordial era began to nurture the Qi of chaos. The Qi of chaos was the materialization of all the matter in the prehistoric universe. It had the weight of the prehistoric universe. The chaos was violent and untamed. The chaos contained everything but had no order. Therefore, anything that wanted to exist stably had to face the pressure of all the Qi of chaos in the entire prehistoric universe. This huge pressure could crush anything tangible. Only the Qi could exist between heaven and earth. In Yuan Yu's memory, the strongest artifact could only last for less than a breath in the Qi of chaos before being crushed. Only a chaos godfiend that could withstand this huge pressure and begin to nurture. The strength of the true body of a chaos god-fiend was imaginable. The reason why Yuan Yu was a half-crippled chaos god-fiend was that his true body's foundation had been shaken by the one in the battle of the Great Tao. He could no longer withstand the pressure of the chaos. He could only rely on the protection of other Taoists and temporarily exist with the help of the chaos god-fiends. Therefore, Yuan Yu could not escape. Without the protection of other Taoists, the Qi of chaos alone could crush his true body. Only with the help of the Purple Cloud Palace, the embryonic form of the multiverse that was temporarily created in the chaos, could he temporarily take a breather. The 3,000 chaos godfiends were 3,000 pillars that held up the entire chaos. When the Chaos God Fiend fetus matured and the Chaos God Fiend was born, the power of the 3,000 Chaos God Fiends would crush the chaos and destroy the entire chaos. Then, the next era would begin, the primordial era. At that time, a world without the pressure of the chaos could allow matter to begin to take shape. Yuan Yu was well aware of the terror of the chaos. It was a terrible tempest that even Grand Luo felt like a small boat amidst a tempest. While they were all gods and demons who shouldered the chaos, Yuan Yu knew that he was the dwarf who pretended to carry an entire world beneath the feet of a giant. Those great divine abilities, on the other hand, could shatter that terrifying world of chaos with their very existence. Who said that the great mystical abilities are in the same realm as us? Yuan Yu was speechless. How arrogant must the Dara be to think that these monsters are also Dara? Were they Dara? It was just that they were still willing to be Dara. No wonder people said that the primordial era was Dara's game and also a game for the great mystical abilities. But in the end, it was still a game for the great mystical abilities. We're just something the great mystical abilities found to put on a show. Yuan Yu was a little depressed. They're the chaotic god fiends. We're just chaotic fish. Then he saw these real chaotic god fiends evolve, those indescribably terrifying things one by one. Heaven, Mount Bujo, the primordial water cycle, the Milky Way, and the river Styx Blood Sea. Those projections emitted ancient waves of the great Tao. When they appeared, even the purple cloud palace groaned as if it could not bear the weight. It was as if the Tao and reason were all shattered. He saw with his green eyes the collision of different heavenly Taos. The heavenly Taos that seemed unreachable and unimaginably powerful in the eyes of cultivators were like playthings in the hands of the great mystical abilities. These different heavens collided with each other, and in an instant, they could destroy countless small worlds like the Myriad Realm. Before becoming Dara, Yuan Yu was like an ant in the collision of these projections. This even made Yuan Yu question himself. Am I really Dara? I'm not a fake grand heavenly immortal, right? Is my zenith heaven immortal realm a gift for topping up your phone? Did I not charge my phone? Fortunately, Yuan Yu's innate nature was the innate, inextinguishable divine aura. He had successfully arrived outside the computer and watched the god fiends fight on the screen. Although he was still immersed in the memory of being a code slave in the past, and felt that the god fiends on the screen could easily crush an entire world. Now that he was familiar with it, he still felt a sense of security. After all, Dara was already free from calamities and tribulations. Everything that was being beaten, destroyed, tortured, and ravaged was only the account on the screen. Yuan Yu raised a Xian bead and supported the Mystic Door's 36 days proposal. Then, unsurprisingly, he found that the support for the proposal was not based on the number of people, but based on power. His support was at most a little symbolic and dispensable spiritual and moral support. Then, unsurprisingly, it was defeated by the other heavens. What happened next continued to ravage Yuan Yu's worldview over and over again. So this is how Mount Bujo was broken. No wonder it's called Mount Bujo. Bujo means incomplete. Isn't Mount Bujo an incomplete mountain? He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Are the great divinities too lazy to give Mount Bujo a new name? Isn't this too appointed? Before I attained Tao, I believed that Zhurong and Gonggong fought and caused Gonggong to break Mount Bujo in anger. But I believed in them. This is a performance, right? Is Gonggong the best actor? It caused an irreparable shadow in my young heart. I knew that Dara could see the past and the future with one glance, how things happened and how many mistakes they made. It turns out that Dara doesn't make mistakes, but he knows how to act. Is the history of my life their stage? It turns out that the great divinities are a bunch of drama queens. Will the three teachers find out that I'm thinking this and kill me? I thought that the game between Dara relied on each other to hide the secrets of the heavens. So it's all about acting? The most important quality of the great divinities is the self-cultivation of an actor. Yuan Yu also saw the primordial water cycle suggested by River Styx. Innate true water. I've finally heard something familiar, something I've come into contact with in the past. After attaining Tao, Dara seems to have suddenly become high-end. It's all about innate spiritual treasures, chaos god fiends and whatnot. You should know that I've never even seen a shadow of an innate spiritual treasure or smelled a chaos god fiend. What innate spiritual roots, connate life forms, Mount Bujo, and the primordial sky? I've never seen any of them. I've embarrassed Dara. Not only have I never eaten a pig, I've never even seen a pig walk. Once again, I wonder, am I really Dara? This is fake, isn't it? Dara seems very high-end. How did a country bumpkin like me become Dara? Why didn't all the super powerful connate life forms succeed, but a country bumpkin like me succeeded? Is there something wrong with this Dara? Innate true water. So awesome. I've only come into contact with two types of innate true water in my life. A certain Taoist achieved Tao with Tianyi true water, but his Tao collapsed before he succeeded. I remember a certain Taoist trump card was the true fire of the sun. In order to snatch the lunar true water from the Cambrian realm, he destroyed it. I'm still one type away from the triple light holy water. I need to refine an entire world's water source to refine a small amount of Tianyi true water. I can only refine a few drops from an entire ocean. This is the easiest innate true water I can find. It's said that the lunar true water requires the lunar origin. Even the lunar origin, solar origin, and stellar origin can't refine much triple light holy water. It's said that there was an ancient world made entirely of stars called the heavenly star realm. Their specialty was the triple light holy water. It's said that a living planet can only refine one drop of triple light every 60 years. In order to refine the triple light holy water, half of the living planets in that world turned into cold, dark, and lifeless planets, allowing extraterrestrial demons to grow in them, which led to the destruction of that world. Is the virtuous pure water the water from the Western virtuous pool? I've heard of it. It's said that only those who attain the Arhat fruit and Bodhisattva fruit can enjoy the virtuous pool once and use the water to cleanse their golden bodies. The first essence heavy water and the 9 heavens weak water are already legends. Yuan Yu thought sadly. After the destruction of the primordial world, there was no thick earth and clear sky. The clear and turbid air in the small world was not enough to nurture the complete 9 heavens weak water and the first essence heavy water. They were all reduced versions of the geocentric heavy water and the pure spirit water. Even so, there are still very precious spiritual treasures and spiritual materials. The heaven underworld spring and the blood river true water are the most precious treasures of the netherworld. It's said that there's also the river Styx and the yellow spring in the netherworld realm. The blood river true water is usually stolen from the netherworld blood sea by old demons who practice the great Azura demon path and turn the living creatures of a world into a sea of blood. The Xianming true water can only be obtained in an extremely cold and dead world, or during a destructive world disaster. Yuan Yu had only heard of it. The cosmic light true water was time. It was everywhere, but Yuan Yu had never heard of any almighty being who could refine time into the cosmic light true water in his next life. He had achieved the Tao in the future, so it could also be said to be his next life. It was said that all the worlds in the universe floated in the river of cosmic light, being worn down by the cosmic light true water. Only in the void realm sea, where the flow of time was very different, could time condense into the cosmic light true water. Once washed by the cosmic light true water, all the universes in that area would be instantly destroyed. Even a Tao Lord would have all their lifespan instantly washed away by the cosmic light true water. It was one of the most dangerous disasters in the void realm sea. Sometimes, the cosmic light true water would form a whirlpool in the river of cosmic light, extracting a fragment of the cosmic light from the nearby world and turning it into countless cosmic light worlds. The cosmic light true water was one of the most marvelous phenomena in the universe. It could be said to be everywhere, but it was also very difficult to see. Even the most ordinary of materials were constantly being eroded by the cosmic true water. Thus, even if one placed a spiritual item in a storage bag or a magic treasure, it would still be eroded by the cosmic true water. The cosmic true water was the most merciless of time, eroding everything. Countless Tao lords dreamed of finding a world that was not affected by the cosmic true water. When he saw the water essence great circulation model, Yuan Yu finally understood the true function of the cosmic light true water. It was just the embodiment of the great Tao of water. Although it seemed to have disappeared after the destruction of the universe, it was actually just a different form. The cosmic light true water was a material form of water, so it could transform into the most ordinary water. A single drop of it could transform into an ocean, and a few drops could transform into all the liquid water a world needed. After the destruction of a universe, its function was to transform the water from the cosmic light true water to the cosmic light true water. It was the embodiment of this downward transformation of water from the cosmic light true water to the cosmic light true water. It was also the embodiment of the material aspect of water. The triple light true water was actually the embodiment of life being nourished by the sun, moon, and stars. It was the embodiment of the Tao of water that nourished this aspect. The Xianming true water was cold. It was winter. The 9 heavens weak water and the first essence heavy water were waters of different densities. It was the principle of water flowing downward. It ensured that water could flow downward regardless of the density of the substance. The yellow skies, yellow springs was the principle of water flowing downward from the blue skies, falling from the sky, to the yellow springs, water from the underground. It was also the principle of the blood river, true water, the true water that contained all impurities. It then purified itself and became the yellow skies, yellow springs. It was the self-purification ability of heaven and earth, and also the symbol of the great Tao of water's purification and impurities. Finally, there was the cosmic light, true water. It symbolized the same principle of time and water. It would only flow downward. Therefore, any existence that tried to go against the flow of time would be washed away by the cosmic light, true water, even more intensely. Although the innate true water disappeared in the future, the great Tao that it represented did not disappear. It turned into different types of acquired true water and still maintained the great water cycle of heaven and earth. They were the material carriers of these principles. The winter goddess Xianming controlled the Xianming true water, so she could freeze everything, and make everything silent. The water goddess Gonggong controlled the Tianyi true water, so she could cause a great flood to cleanse the earth. The dragon clan of the 4 seas controlled the Tianyi true water, so they could protect the 4 seas and control the eye of the sea. The mystic door controlled the triple light true water, so they could absorb the essence of the sun and the moon and could enlighten demon spirits. Even the underworld had to rely on the blood river true water and the yellow skies, yellow springs to purify the impurities. It represented the nurturing and purification of the earth. The inside of the river Styx contained and purified the impurities produced by heaven and earth. The innate true water formed its own authority. It could be said that it was the embodiment of the water god's authority in the past. Yuan Yu began to respect the river Styx patriarch more and more. In the future, the river Styx patriarch gave up many benefits, but he also gained the most. He became the symbol of the great water cycle of heaven and earth, the enlightened water ancestor of Pangu. After Pangu created the world, the water ancestor of Pangu transformed into the great water cycle of heaven and earth, turning into the 9 types of innate true water and the ultimate. Yuan Yu saw the chaotic hole that River Styx finally evolved into, the huge abyss, the abyss. He was so scared that he almost trembled. The ultimate, the place where the universe ended. The remains of the destroyed worlds would sink into the realm sea and reach the bottom of the realm sea. There was a bottomless abyss there that devoured all the remains of the worlds and destroyed everything. That was the ultimate. According to legend, the destruction of the universe was the gradual falling of the worlds into the ultimate, causing the power of the ultimate to grow stronger and stronger. In the end, it devoured everything and turned everything into nothingness. The demon Tao of the ultimate was an existence that made Yuan Yu feel fear from the bottom of his heart. They were the enemies of all existences in the universe. They were the opposite of existence, the symbol of destruction. Even the powerhouses of the fiendish Tao who cultivated the ultimate would mostly be devoured by the great Tao of the ultimate that they attempted to control. A golden immortal like Yuan Yu would also be ground down by the great Tao of the ultimate. The ultimate was like an incurable infectious disease, a gigantic millstone that obliterated everything. It was the nightmare of all living beings in the universe. As he watched River Styx evolve the ultimate and practice his great Tao of evolution, natural selection, survival of the fittest, it was the same for the world. Therefore, there had to be the ultimate Dharma ending, destruction and annihilation tribulations to realize the great destruction of the world. Great horror, great despair, and the survival of the fittest naturally eliminated those worlds. So, this is how the ultimate was created. As Yuan Yu watched Patriarch River Styx slowly explain the great Tao of the ultimate, it was as though he was looking at a living devil. It was horrifying, an unimaginable fiendish shadow. Chapter 1234. The great mediums in the Purple Cloud Palace watched as the Netherworld River evolved into the Sea of Heavens and the world model of the ruins of End. They were all moved. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning had a thought and thought. The great Tao of the ruins of End seems to coincide with the numinous treasure. The creation of the primordial world and the evolution of the Tao were divided into three stages: primordial chaos, and primordial Tao. Among them, Dara dominated the primordial chaos and symbolized the beginning of chaos, the initial separation of yin and yang, and the emergence of Lingbao. The second great century of Taoism was called the primordial chaos period. As preachers, the three pure ones symbolized the incarnation of the great Tao. As the hegemon of Pangu, the monopolist of the orthodox Pangu, the primordial chaos universe evolved from the three qi of beginning, Yuan, and Xian. It could be said that it gathered all of Dara's Tao fruit and was the orthodox great Tao of the primordial universe. According to the script, in the Taisu era, the 3,000 chaotic demons grew up and became the perfect prototype of the universe for Dara's Tao fruit. The 3,000 chaotic demons devoured each other and gathered all the prototype of the universe to give birth to the future Pangu. Therefore, the 3,000 chaotic demons devoured each other. The only winner would plunder everyone's great Tao and prototype of the universe to achieve his own Tao fruit. It would become the source of the great Tao and the essence of all existences. Great Heavenly Lord Pangu. This was the tradition of fighting for Pangu since the Candle Dragon era. The winner would integrate all of Dara's wisdom and great Tao and become the source of the great Tao of the primordial world. Therefore, the tradition of the primordial world was that Pangu was the strongest. This tradition lasted for several Panga eras before it was destroyed by the two great mediums, Nviwa and Fushi. Originally, everyone would fight against each other, and the final winner would be Pangu. Suddenly, someone announced that we were husband and wife, brother and sister. In the future, the two of us will fight against each other together. After all, we are husband and wife. Hutu felt that she had been betrayed. Fortunately, the marriage between Goddess Nviwa and Fushi was just an isolated phenomenon. After the era of the god of natural power, the ancient gods of patriarchal power rose. There could not be two suns in the sky, and it was impossible for the ancient gods to have two emperors. Therefore, in the era of the Tai Emperor of Heaven, the Chaos Emperor of Heaven, the Heavenly King Yuan Shi, and the Heavenly King Ling Bao, everyone began to fight one-on-one again and decided the ownership of Pangu through duels. The combination of Emperor Nviwa and Emperor Shi was faintly targeted. After all, it was difficult for 3 fists to fight against 4 fists. Even if they were husband and wife, they could not go against everyone's secret targeting. Therefore, in that era, this method of forming a combination to cheat was suppressed. In that era, no matter how powerful a powerful being was, he couldn't fight against everyone. Therefore, the position of Pan-gu changed the fastest. Usually, after a Pan-gu era, the previous Pan-gu would be targeted by everyone, intentionally or unintentionally, and would have to abdicate the position of Pan-gu. During this period, the position of Pan-gu would change according to the situation of Dara's interest group. Every Pangaji was forming alliances, colluding, and exchanging benefits. Then, in the next round of fighting for Pangu, they would begin the game. The result of the game was often unexpected. Some people, who were not the strongest, could often be induced by the situation to prove Pangu's Dao. Until the appearance of that person, the Taishang proved Dao, Daoran, Yuanshi, and Heavenly King of Lingbao. A foul combination that could challenge everyone else appeared. The combination of the three pure ones had the power to challenge all other great mediums. Moreover, because of the rise of the post-celestial creatures and the three pure ones' abandonment of the leadership of the untainted land, the interests and foundation of the great mediums were divided. As a result, there were two camps among the great mediums: the post-celestial creatures, the ancient gods, and the post-celestial creatures, the human race, who could not challenge the position of the three pure ones. The monopolist of Pangu was finally born. The world entered the era of the three pure ones' domination of Pangu, until the post-celestial human camp completely suppressed the camp of the ancient gods, forcing the great mediums among the ancient gods to go offline. In the end, they were dissatisfied with the three pure ones' domination of Pangu for a long time. The mystic door suppressed the divine path, and the situation where the masculine body completely suppressed the feminine body of Dara. Goddess Hotu waved her arm and summoned the most excessive combination of the 12 great mediums in history to fight against the three pure ones. Therefore, Pangu was the source of the great Tao, and also the greatest benefit that surpassed all the benefits of the untainted land in the future. River Styx stirred up the future of the untainted land. So what if he had a plan and a plan? As long as the three pure ones occupied the position of the orthodox Pangu, they would have a share of all the benefits and the biggest share. River Styx became the incarnation of the water ancestor of Pangu. However, the three pure ones were Pangu. No matter how many benefits River Styx seized, the three pure ones would have a share. Pangu was the head office of the untainted land, and the three pure ones were the three biggest shareholders of the board of directors. Together, they were the chairman. When a great medium like River Styx proved the Panga Dharma, it was equivalent to opening a branch under the Panga Corporation and taking the post of the general manager of the branch. No matter how many benefits this branch took from the head office, or how many customers this branch took, the biggest shares still belonged to the head office, and the three pure ones would still take the biggest cake. The only thing that the three pure ones had to worry about was that after the branch grew bigger, the general manager would win over the project manager and force him to abdicate. Therefore, the ultimate was the manifestation of the water ancestor of River Styx, the foundation of the devil path, and the root of River Styx. So what if it was true? The untainted land still belonged to the three pure ones. Therefore, the primeval of beginning had a good idea. The untainted land had no end, and the untainted land had no doomsday. There was no link where the world would be destroyed. It was like a river without an end. The untainted land was not a cycle, but a fish, Dara, born in the middle of the river. It traced its way back to the source of the untainted land, then changed its course and basin, and became a new river. Every Pangu era was a change of course in the untainted land. However, every time, the untainted land would only go too far, becoming desolate and desolate, from rich to barren. But it would not be destroyed. Therefore, the untainted land had no end. As the source of the great Tao of Pangu, the three pure ones only symbolized the process of Tao begetting one, one begetting two, two begetting three, and three begetting all things. The River Styx created the ultimate and built the destruction model of the heavenly realm sea, which was equivalent to building an end model for the untainted land. It made the untainted land into something out of nothing. Infinity gave birth to Tai Chi. Tao begot one, one begot two, two begot three, and then three begot all things. The foundation of the world was set. Finally, it stepped into the ultimate, and everything returned to nothing. Tai Chi returned to infinity. This was the biggest purpose of the ultimate model. It gave all living things, gave all existences an ending of death. It was the great destruction, great terror, great end. Everything went from nothingness to existence, and from existence to nothingness, turning the chaos world into a cycle, a circle, an Ouroboros. From then on, the chaos world was no longer a river changing its course, and the chaos world was no longer a river with no beginning and no end. Instead, it was a cycle with a beginning and an end. Every time the ultimate annihilated all existences and returned to Wuji, it was the beginning of the next era. At this time, the three pure ones, as the orthodox Panga clan, naturally had to accommodate this new model. The river Styx could only occupy the ultimate to create a foundation for the demonic path, but the three pure ones could incorporate the entire cycle of the universe into their own Tao fruit. They were interested in the concept of everything returning to nothing, which was the end of all things, and the process of Tai Chi returning to infinity. Interesting. The three of us are squeezed into the same Tao beginning epoch where Wuji gives birth to Taiji. It's really too cramped. As a result, our authorities overlap. Taoist Mingy's ruin of N model determines the destruction that the universe has to go through. He also proposed the destruction concept of Taiji returning to Wuji. The primeval of beginning turned to the Grand Supreme and asked, "What do you think, brother?" The Grand Supreme pondered and said, "The primeval is Tai Chi, which is the creation of something out of nothing and the process of developing the foundation of all things. The Grand Supreme is Tai Chi, which is the foundation of existence. Ling Bao is Tai Chi, which returns to infinity and returns to nothing. It is indeed not bad, but if that is the case, we have to give some benefits to the river Styx. It is not impossible to agree with his model of the sea of heavens and the ultimate path." The primeval of beginning lowered his eyes and said, "However, if the ultimate is established as the foundation of the demonic path, there will be a time when everything will return to nothing. There will be the calamity of the heavens and the destruction of the demonic path and the disappearance of the demonic path. It is the general trend of the heavenly Tao. By that time, the mystic door and Sakya's Buddhism will fail, and only the demonic path can take the opportunity to prosper. It is fine." The Grand Supreme said, "When the ultimate develops to its peak, even the demonic path will be destroyed. The demonic path will be destroyed, and all the demonic path cultivators who cultivate the path of the ultimate will be devoured by the ultimate when the ultimate comes and become the ultimate itself. Taoist river Styx will only be able to help the demonic path gain the general trend and destiny for a short period of time. We can use this to train our disciples and use the demonic path to polish the mystic door. I think Sakya has the same idea. Why not give the ultimate to junior brother Ling Bao?" The primeval of beginning frowned. "The ultimate needs to destroy everything, shake the will of existence, and destroy everything. When that time comes, our orthodoxy will also be destroyed. If we hand it over to junior brother, he will not be able to bear it. Moreover, such a strong destructive aura is not beneficial to the orthodoxy of the mystic door. Why does junior brother primeval of beginning want the ultimate great Tao to belong to the mystic door?" The Grand Supreme shook his head. "Giving it to the demonic path is the best choice. We only need to grasp the intangible great Tao. The beginning and end of Tao are the three pure ones. The three Chis of beginning, origin, and mystic create everything and give birth to all things. In the end, the foundation of the world will return to the three Chis and return to Wuji." The three pure ones discussed for a while and felt that the model of river Styx was not bad, so they might as well support it. Meanwhile, the demonic path Dara behind river Styx was boiling. An old Gu demon saw the model of the ultimate devouring the heavenly realm sea and the projection of all worlds heading towards the end. He slapped his thigh excitedly. "Is this the heavenly Tao on my side?" Beside him, a crown prince of Mara said with tears streaming down his face, Finally, we are destined to win one round. I've been bullied by the righteous path Dara so badly. No matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I struggle, I always temporarily gain the upper hand, and in the end, they always win. Oh my, we finally made it. There are still some who did not understand, so they quickly asked the people around them, "What is going on?" The old demon beside him was touched. "Fellow Taoist, have you worked very hard in the past to bring glory to our path, to demonize everything, to destroy the righteous path hypocrites? More often than not, when your plan is halfway to success and all the difficulties have been eliminated, some juniors who are like ants would obtain great luck out of thin air. Countless righteous path Dara would intervene in the dark, causing you to fail at the last step and have to leave with regret. Yet, they say that evil will never prevail over righteousness, and that it is the general trend of the heavenly Tao." The person's body froze, and a sad expression appeared on his face, as if he could not bear to look back. Now, the era of evil will never prevail over righteousness, and the victory of the demonic path is only temporary, and it will never return. Now, the heavenly Tao can also be in my hands. Upon hearing this answer, the person clenched his fists, and a complicated expression appeared in his eyes, and he could not help but ask, "What did you say?" The great ancestor river Styx established the ultimate and set the number of worlds to be destroyed. Whenever the resources of some worlds in the realm sea of heavens are exhausted, and from prosperity to decline, it would be filled with the aura of doom, destruction, and fear, and would be pulled by the ultimate to sink into the bottom of the realm sea. This process is the chance for the demonic path to prosper, and the Tao will disappear and the demonic path will grow. Although the mystic door has the responsibility to save the world, the general trend is with me, and the mystic door will have to put in twice the effort for half the result, while the demonic path will have twice the result with half the effort, and will always be the sect of destiny. In the end, this world will sink into the ultimate and be destroyed into nothingness. But the old demon was slightly hesitant. "Won't we be destroyed as well? Are you stupid? Dara, no tribulation. Besides, as long as you continue to cultivate in this world and then destroy another world, destroying the living beings of that world, you'll have a chance to transcend. Every time a cultivation world is destroyed, there will be a chance to prove the Tao, and there will be a chance to give birth to a demonic Tao Lord. The opportunity for the demonic path to prosper has finally arrived. When the time comes, the demons of the demonic path can use the opportunity of destroying a world to create an opportunity to advance. As long as the worlds in the realm sea of heavens continue to be destroyed, the demonic path will have its own foundation and territory. When the great Tao returns to the ultimate, all the worlds will be pulled by the power of the ultimate, and the realm sea of heavens will be shrouded by the aura of doom, destruction, fear, and doom. Then, the demonic path will completely prosper in the realm sea of heavens, and the Tao of the universe will decline, and the demonic path will grow, and the demonic path will become the main character of the era. This is the final tribulation of destruction, the tribulation of all Taoists to the ultimate, the tribulation of the end of the great Tao. The postnatal vitality will be transformed into the filth, exhaustion, destruction, and energy that is suitable for the survival and cultivation of the demonic path. Patriarch River Styx is indeed the new leader of the demonic path. Dara of the demonic path felt as if he had been enlightened and refreshed. He was even more convinced of River Styx and no longer had any dissatisfaction. The fatal weakness of the demonic path was that it was difficult to have a foundation. After all, in the realm sea of heavens, there were very few worlds that were suitable for the demonic path. In other worlds, the demonic path only had a chance to prosper for a short period of time, but in the end, it would still be suppressed by the righteous path of the mystic door, or even destroyed. The opportunity that belonged to the demonic path in the cultivation history of a world was like the thin layer of cream in a biscuit. It left Patriarch Dara of the demonic path with endless aftertaste, but also full of regret. Ro looked at Dara of the demonic path, who was whispering excitedly and had forgotten about him. the former demonic path cult leader. He could not help but feel indignant and aggrieved. He said angrily, "Mine, it's all mine. All of this was originally mine. I was the one who proposed the great destructive demonic path. I was the one who established the principles of destruction, fear, and the end of the demonic path. Wake up, all of you. I, Ro, am the ancestor of the great destructive demonic path. That river Styx only used the great destructive demonic path to stir up the killing tribulation and control the tribulation. He is the killing tribulation demon ancestor, and I am the destruction demon ancestor." At this moment, Ro felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up and saw that it was the annoying face of River Styx. River Styx whispered, "Brother, do you want to make a deal?" Ro secretly clenched his fists. "I'll endure it." "What deal?" "I will hand the destruction demonic path over to you. You will still be the demon ancestor of destruction, end, and fear. When the worlds come to an end, you will still be the incarnation of destruction. All the demonic path forces that cultivate the destruction demonic path will still be your disciples and disciples. Your true body must be hidden in the ultimate. When the Dharma ending and end tribulation arrive, under the guidance of the great Tao, you will appear in every world and destroy everything. Finally, you will become the destruction great Tao and return everything to nothingness." "You want to fill me in the ultimate?" Ro roared. "How can you call it filling in the ultimate?" River Styx said innocently, "Before the chaos was broken, my water ancestor turned into the 9 great true waters, the 5 great river channels, the southern underworld ultimate, and the blood sea, River Styx. Then we pretended to do it. I suppressed you in the sea eye of the ultimate, and when the chaos was broken, you would become the incarnation of the destruction great in the ultimate. You would be the final disaster of destruction. We can make up a story. Let's say that you have tainted the ultimate and become the place where all things end. As for me, I'm just a pure Pangu water ancestor. I am the shell of the ultimate, the eye of the water circulation in that table. I am just a demon ancestor who controls the destruction great. I will let you destroy the world. How about that? Aren't you going to fill me in the CI? That will be good for you too," River Styx said earnestly. "Otherwise, if I control the destruction great, I will be the symbol of the end and destruction. What does the devil path have to do with you? You want to suppress me, and you want to suppress me in the era of Pangu. Don't be so shameless." River Styx pointed at Ro's nose and said, "When the time comes, if you piss me off, I will really suppress you in the ultimate and refine you into the incarnation of my great Tao of destruction. By then, you will be one of my incarnations, Ro. Do you understand? I, the demon ancestor, will turn into 3 incarnations, River Styx, Ro, and K2. I will become the only leader of the devil path. Do you agree or not?" River Styx's Avicii Uinta sword was unsheathed. Ro's expression was uncertain. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I will bear with it. Fill the ultimate, so be it. But let's make it clear. The one who proves the great Tao of the ultimate is my subordinate. Don't you snatch it away again. All right, from now on, you will be the deputy leader of the devil path, the incarnation of the great Tao of destruction, Demon Ro." River Styx floated up and said to Ro, "Brother, I hope that the 2 of us will work together to make the devil path flourish." Ro's face twitched, and he thought to himself, taking advantage of me again. Who is my brother? I achieved Tao much earlier than you. River Styx is powerful, so I will bear with it. River Styx looked around for people to trade with. He said to Hong Di, "My friend Hong Di, previously I supported your proposal of 9 fields in the sky. Why don't you repay me this time? Don't worry, the orthodox devil path is still in the human race. Demons and heavenly devils won't be able to do anything. Kuan Peng has already been tricked into becoming the leader of the demon race. When the human race flourishes, I will definitely stand on the side of the human race. I, River Styx, am also a human," he said to Empress Hua and Emperor Shi. "Empress Hua, the great Tao of evolution is definitely compatible with your great Tao of creation. My friend Emperor Shi, the great Tao of heavenly Tao is competitive survival of the fittest. Only when the calamity of death is upon us will the variable of the Tao of E be born. Only in the world of competition can the glory continue. I am the biggest variable of this era. This is the time for me to show my ambition. I hope that you will support me. He also secretly flirted with He too. Empress, support me this time. When we fight for Pangu, River Styx will repay you. He said to the ancestral dragon, my friend ancestral dragon, I will hand over the ocean eyes of the four seas and the Tiani true water to you. He said a gong gong, if you dare to ruin my plan. Be careful. I will support the ancestral dragon in mastering the Tao of the Tiani true water. By then, the rain and flood will be controlled by the dragon race. He said to Xianming, sister, here is the Xianming true water, and heavenly Lord Yuan Shi and Taishang Daozu. It's a deal. Great heavenly Lord Ling Bao is the incarnation of the great Tao from existence to nothingness. The great Tao of ultimate belongs to me, and the process of the metaphysical Tao is yours. Chapter 1235. Yuan Yu stared nervously at the big shots. He clenched his fists, his palms sweaty. Finally, it was time to vote. As the ultimate model was not the standard model of the prehistoric world, there were no competitors. Perhaps in the next Pangu era, the parties who had figured out the specific situation would come up with their own ultimate model. But for now, this was still something created by River Styx. New things were often questioned. Only when new things were stable and accepted would there be people who want to pluck the peaches. The peaches had not ripened yet, so no one competed with River Styx for now. When it was time to vote, Dara threw in Xian beads. Those who opposed would use Xian beads to knock down the ultimate model. Those who supported would throw in Xian beads to strengthen the projection of the ultimate. If the ultimate model swallowed everyone's Xian beads, the proposal would pass. When Pangu opened the sky, Ancestor River Styx's Dharma would transform into enlightened water, Ancestor Pangu. When Pangu fell, it would transform into the ultimate. River Styx, Milky Way, Earth River, Milky Way, foresees completing the water cycle of the prehistoric world. Yuan Yu raised his Xian beads without hesitation and smashed them into the ultimate. There were many others who raised their Xian beads and smashed them into the ultimate. Dara of Diabolism threw the Xian beads into the ultimate to strengthen the projection of the ultimate. However, those few Diabolism Dara were weak. Compared to the opposing forces of the mystic door and Buddhism, they were very weak. Luoluo, hundreds of Xian beads connected into one. It was like the projection of hundreds of universes smashing into the ultimate. Dara of Diabolism only had dozens of universes. They threw in the ultimate to strengthen its power. The three pure ones, who were sitting at the top, did not make a move. The great mediums looked on coldly. Ancestral Dragon pondered for a while and did not throw out the dragon race. Only Gong Gong's eyes flashed fiercely. He hesitated for a moment and threw out a Xian bead, smashing it into the projection of the ultimate. The projection of hundreds of Dara's power was the power of hundreds of chaotic gods and demons. They were the embryonic forms of hundreds of universes that were being nurtured. They joined forces and rose, almost turning into a primordial universe, condensing into the embryonic form of a multiverse. The Purple Cloud Palace was shaken again. The Tao and truth of hundreds of Dara intertwined, as if they had obliterated the great Tao. On one side was the projection of the great path of hundreds of universes, and on the other side was the demonic shadow of the ruins of End that devoured everything and obliterated everything. Dara of the demonic path felt as if the profound bead universe that he had thrown into the ruins of End had been completely crushed by a huge millstone, returning to nothingness. A portion of the wreckage strengthened the power of the ruins of End, causing the great Tao of the ruins of End to suddenly soar. The aura of nirvanic, annihilation, and annihilation surged upwards, causing Dara, who were related to the aura of the profound bead universe, to tremble. The chaos god-fiend fetus trembled instinctively, as though it had met its natural enemy. Fortunately, the pre-celestial, inextinguishable spirit light isolated everything. There were no disasters or tribulations, and they weren't affected by the aura of the endless ruins. Demonic Path and Dara glanced at each other. They could see the joy and fear in each other's eyes. If even the pre-celestial, inextinguishable spirit light could be eroded by the aura of the endless ruins, then they would have to reconsider their own force fields. Space and time trembled. The great Tao was annihilating hundreds of Dara-joined forces, and their aura was tyrannical for a moment, suppressing the ruins of End. However, following the destruction of the projection of the profound bead universe, the power of the ruins of End rapidly grew. Several profound bead universes at the periphery were contaminated with the ominous aura emitted by the ruins of End. Suddenly, they couldn't stand up straight. They swayed a few times and fell into the black hole of the ruins of End. The few Dara also felt the feeling of the universe of the Dara of the demonic path being obliterated. The Chaos God Fiend true body felt as though it was facing a great enemy, as though it had encountered its nemesis. Heavenly Lord Yunyu knew how powerful the ruins of End was. Although he didn't see the complete projection of the great Tao of End like he did in the Purple Cloud Palace, which was a demonic shadow that destroyed everything, he had come into contact with a few worlds that had been pulled down to the realm sea by the aura of the ruins of End before he attained Tao. It was the aura of doomsday before the world was destroyed. It was the kind of annihilation that obliterated everything. Therefore, he hid his profound bead in the relatively safe center of the universe projection and was not pulled in by the ruins of End. However, he still opened his mouth to remind everyone, fellow Taoists, if the great Tao of End takes form, it will be a chaos God Fiend that can annihilate everything. It will be the destruction God Fiend among chaos God Fiends. It is our natural enemy. That God Fiend will definitely be able to obliterate our chaos God Fiend true bodies. We must not let it come into being. Otherwise, there will be a day when Pangu of the demonic path will come into being. Yuan, you didn't know why the great mystical beings hadn't made a move yet. If the great Tao of End was allowed to come into being, it would definitely be a huge hidden danger. It might even overturn the primordial universe. From the characteristics of the great Tao of End, once Patriarch River Styx completed his ruins of End, then the next Pangaji would not be the incarnation discovered by Panga Water Ancestor, but the incarnation of Panga's world-destroying Dharma, the incarnation of the great Tao of End. By then, the Chaos Fiend God that Patriarch River Styx transformed into would be the Chaos Fiend God of End. He was born to devour all Chaos Fiend gods to strengthen his own power. Once he devoured many Chaos Fiend gods and Dara's Fruit of Way, this Fiend God's power would definitely be strong enough to devour everything, including these great mystical beings. This was because the great mystical beings could only obtain a part of the great Tao of those Chaos Fiend gods when they killed and suppressed other Chaos Fiend gods. This was because their great Tao was not about devouring and destruction, while the Fiend God of End could obtain all the power of those Chaos Fiend gods. As time passed, the Fiend God of End would definitely devour 3,000 Chaos Fiend gods and become Pangu. Yuan Yu thought that demon ancestor River Styx must have an earth-shattering and destructive plot. He used Water Ancestor and the Water Cycle as a cover in the Purple Cloud Palace. His real plot was to create the terrifying existence of the ruins of End. Then, in the process of the ruins of End destroying the universe, he would perfect the great Tao of End, prove his Tao, and finally devour 3,000 Chaos Fiend gods and become Pangu. Create the universe of demonic path. The great Tao of End is indeed interesting. Primordial Beginning turned to Grand Supreme and said, "Let Junior Brotherling Bao come back. Take advantage of this opportunity to establish the great Tao of End. Quickly establish the Tao of Ling Bao that has returned to nothingness. In the next Pangu era, we will kick River Styx away. The three of us will control the creation of the universe, the foundation of existence, and the ruins of End." Grand Supreme shook his head and said, It's best for junior brother Ling Bao to be the source of the great Tao. There's no need to get involved with the great Tao of destruction. Didn't you see that River Styx refused to meddle with the great Tao of destruction? He let Ro take the blame. Although the great Tao of end is powerful, it's only one side of the great Tao. Even if it is traced back to the end of the great Tao, without the Tao of primordial beginning and the opportunity for the existence of Taiji, it can't be called the source of the great Tao. Not to mention the great Tao of destruction below it. Destruction is ultimately a small Tao. Without existence, there will be no destruction. Without creation, there will be no existence. Junior brother Ling Bao should really come back. Creation, existence, and destruction are one-sided forms of the source of the great Tao. Primordial Supreme, Grand Supreme, and Ling Bao are metaphysical. To Heavenly Lord Yuanyu, the hidden danger of destruction was nothing to Grand Supreme. Brother Ro, River Styx saw that the great Tao of end had swallowed dozens of Dara's Xian beads and strengthened to the point where it could compete with hundreds of Dara's cosmic projections. However, the hundreds of Dara were not ordinary people. Seeing that the great Tao of end had used their Xian beads as nourishment to strengthen itself, they quickly changed the arrangement of the cosmic projections according to the nature of the great Tao of end. They connected the hundreds of scattered universes into one and became a whole. The scattered power condensed into a whole and could still suppress the great Tao of end. Of course, it was impossible to strengthen the great Tao of end Dara to this extent. At this moment, Gong Gong also threw out a Xian bead. The water droplet-like Dara Xian bead landed in the hole made up of hundreds of cosmic projections and immediately became the core. The long river of the sky contained all the embryonic cosmic projections and instantly formed an infinitely mysterious array formation. It turned into a surging flood and rushed towards the great Tao of end. In an instant, the combined power of the hundreds of Dara increased by dozens of times. They rushed towards the great Tao projection of the great Tao of end and really had the power to destroy the projection of the great Tao of end. Many Dara who opposed the great Tao of end heaved a sigh of relief. The reason why they had tried their best to delay was to wait for such an opportunity. They were waiting for a chance for a great medic who was dissatisfied with River Styx's plan to jump out. Of course, this was not a crisis for River Styx. River Styx only needed to use a little more strength to condense the destructive aura in the middle of the great Tao of end into a projection of the embodiment of destruction. However, River Styx did not do so. On one hand, it was to hide its true strength. It was to show the great medic that it did not want to dip its hands into the great Tao of destruction, seize Ro's embodiment, become the final demon ancestor, and open up the demonic path paying universe. On the other hand, it was to avoid the sh** teapot that was the great Tao of destruction. In this aspect, River Styx and the Grand Supreme had the same intention. Although the great Tao of destruction was very powerful, it was not a particularly good path for great medic at their level. Only a poor and weak person like Ro would treat it as a treasure. If that was the case, it was better to give it away. The Grand Supreme wanted to give it to River Styx, but River Styx refused and gave it to Ro instead. Therefore, River Styx decisively gestured to Ro, who was beside him. Ro was worried that River Styx would go back on his word. He could also see the future potential of the demon god of end from the projection of the great Tao of end. It was a chaotic god fiend that had the potential to prove the Tao of Pangu. The heavens had pity on him. He, Ro, had worked hard for so many years, but he had not even come close to Pangu. Although he was a demon ancestor, he was actually a trash can of the mystic door Buddhist sect. His days were really miserable and difficult. If he could change his occupation to the great Tao of destruction and become a part of the cycle of the universe, he would instantly become awesome. The demonic path could also call itself the orthodox path of the universe. It would be more awesome, and its power would be stronger. One was the distracting thoughts and negative energy of the demonic path. The other was the great Tao of destruction, the end of all things, the great Tao of finality. The latter was really awesome. In the past, the demonic path was just an evil force based on desire. In the future, it would be the representative of the will of the world's destruction. It would also be able to watch the Buddhist sect of the mystic Dor Buddhist sect struggle to save the world from above. It would sneer and say that the Tao was futile, and then it would destroy everything with a flip of its hand. It was equivalent to upgrading from an antagonist to the final boss. Just thinking about it made Ro feel like he was about to orgasm. Now, he was only worried that River Styx would go back on his word after seeing the potential of the great Tao of destruction. There was no need to be surprised. If it was Ro, he would go back on his word. Fortunately, River Styx did not seem to have that intention. Instead, he gestured for him to start. Ro threw her own Xian bead and watched as the Xian bead landed in the ultimate. It was stained with the aura of destruction. The embryonic form of the Xian bead universe was destroyed, but it transformed into the shadow of the destruction demon god Ro. It was born from the ultimate. The aura of destruction emitted by the projection of the ultimate turned into the destruction demon god Ro. There were even some Ro that directly appeared in the projection of the Xian bead universes of the righteous path. Then she easily destroyed that universe and threw it into the ultimate. One could see the black vortex in the projection of the ultimate. After giving birth to the destruction demon god Ro, it no longer hid itself and waited for the hundreds of embryonic forms of the universes controlled by Gong to turn into a flood and attack. Instead, it turned every bit of its aura and every bit of its power into an invasive power. Turning into the power of the demonic path was equivalent to turning an aura that originally had no lethality into the most terrifying poison. The corrosive virus spread violently, and the destructive poison caused severe damage. One could see the universe projection that was originally stained with the aura of the ultimate and could still suppress it. When the aura of destruction of the ultimate turned into the demon ancestor of Ro. The projection of Ro in the universe was very weak at first, but it hid very well. Then it began to spread the demonic path, corrupting living beings, destroying, and corrupting the universe. It strengthened the aura of the ultimate and pulled the universe towards the ultimate. The countless living beings in the projection were originally helping to resist the corrosion of the aura of the ultimate. Now, Ro was spreading Tao techniques and divine powers among them, instigating them to destroy the foundation of the universe. Instantly, dozens of universes were destroyed. The power that was turned into the great Tao of the ultimate corroded the universe projection of Dara's Xian bead even more intensely. The collision of the two powers made the embryonic form of the Purple Cloud Palace multiverse unable to withstand it. The entire Purple Cloud Palace was groaning and trembling. The various great mediums had no choice but to help stabilize the Purple Cloud Palace so that it did not shatter into chaos. Actually, the Purple Cloud Palace that was jointly created by the various great mediums should not have been unable to withstand the collision of hundreds of projections of Dara's universes and the ultimate universe created by River Styx. The entity that was called the Ultimate was more or less the same. However, a large portion of the Purple Cloud Palace's power was supporting the weight of the chaos. In the chaos, the existence of the Purple Cloud Palace was not stable, which was why something went wrong. The flood power that Gong used to integrate all of Dara's Xian bead was quickly eroded by Ro into a pool of poisonous water. In the blink of an eye, the power of the great Tao of the ultimate expanded to an uncontrollable extent after devouring dozens of universes. It devoured all of Dara's Xian bead and turned into a demonic shadow that destroyed everything. The power of the destruction demon god that was nurtured in the center of the ultimate had also reached an extreme level. The attitudes of the various great mediums changed slightly. Dihong began to think deeply. From the looks of it, the threat of the ultimate was actually very great. However, River Styx had given up on the great Tao of destruction and split the complete destruction demon god into two. One was Ro's destruction demon god, and the other was River Styx's destruction demon god. Only when the two were combined into one would it be the complete destruction demon god. From the looks of it, River Styx had a limit. At least he had taken the initiative to split his own power. If River Styx had mastered the complete destruction demon god, that terrifying power that could devour everything would have made many great mediums fearful. They might even change their attitude and try to balance River Styx. However, River Styx had taken the initiative to split this power. Dihong had no choice but to consider it carefully. Dihong was not afraid of the power of the destruction demon god. He had once been Hong Jun's man and was the only person who had caused the three pure ones to suffer such a huge loss. Who would he be afraid of? However, Dihong was the ruler and the big boss behind the human race. He had to consider the interests of the human race. Would the ultimate harm the interests of the human race? From the looks of it, it would. However, River Styx had split the ultimate, and River Styx was also human. This made Dihong ponder deeply. If either of these two conditions were missing, Dihong would not hesitate to immediately balance the ultimate. However, the ultimate was now under the control of the human race. River Styx was also the big boss of the human race. Once this idea appeared, it would not disappear. There would always be people who would be interested in it. Rather than waiting for the three pure ones to give the Pangu era and try to open up some numinous treasure final trial, it would be better to let River Styx control the ultimate. As the Earth Mother Goddess, what the Lady of Earth liked the most was the reproduction of living beings. It was life, nurturing, nourishing, and selflessly providing for all living beings. That was why she had been so compatible with Nuwa, who was in charge of creation. The power of destruction could not get the Mother Goddess to show any mercy. She instinctively hated the power of the sinkhole. Few of the great mediums present liked the great Tao of destruction. However, the great Tao of destruction was not without its appeal. For example, the idea of the great reincarnation of heaven and earth. It created something out of nothing and returned to nothingness. If nothingness was seen as the foundation that nurtured everything, then Wuji was like the fundamental power of the earth that nurtured existence. A reincarnation in the primordial era was equivalent to a life withering and blooming or a season of the earth. Hutu admired this idea. River Styx dressed himself up as the ultimate, as the end of all living beings, as the medium that returned to nothingness. He let Ro do all the bad things. She divided the great Tao of destruction into parts of destruction and parts of nothingness. She even turned the ultimate into an existence that restrained the destruction of the devil god. The ultimate was equivalent to an internal balance of duality. The power of destruction and the power of nothingness were entangled together. The power of destruction. Ro wanted to destroy everything. The power of nothingness created destruction and restrained destruction. This was because destruction would destroy itself. A part of the existence that was destroyed would return to nothingness. A part of it would strengthen the destruction itself. Then, the destruction would destroy itself and strengthen nothingness. Nothingness would restrain destruction and prevent it from losing control. After Ro's incarnation emerged from the ultimate destruction finally destroyed everything. In the end, the projection of the ultimate began to collapse. Ro's incarnation began to destroy its existence. It entangled with the ultimate and gradually disappeared, finally turning into nothingness. When the great mediums saw this, they smiled and nodded. As expected, the Netherworld River did not indulge in the power of destruction limitlessly. This power was still under control. The Netherworld River had created a power that could restrain destruction and personally controlled it. That was the power that returned to infinity, nothingness. Destruction could not destroy nothingness, but nothingness grew because of destruction. In the end, when destruction lost control, destruction would also return to nothingness. Just like how a flame that had burned out would also be extinguished. Destruction was fire, and nothingness was water. Nothingness was the outer shell of the ultimate. The ultimate would be formed by the great Tao of destruction and nothingness. Destruction was a process, and nothingness was the result of destruction. Therefore, nothingness would not lose. The final victor would be nothingness and the power of water. Ro's expression did not look good. In the end, it was that **starred River Styx who had the last laugh. Her destruction had become a gift for his nothingness. River Styx did not care about him at all. It was enough for him to take advantage of her. Was he trying to climb on top of him? Even the three pure ones would not agree to it, much less River Styx himself. If destruction was truly above everything else, how could they control the great Tao of numinous treasures that returned to Wuji? Hongdi secretly sent a voice transmission to River Styx. Elder Ancestor, seeing that we are both humans, I will not oppose the ultimate, but Ro's great Tao of destruction must be suppressed. Creation and destruction can only occupy a short period of time. Existence must be the main force. It is impossible for the first half to prosper and then decline in the second half. The demonic path must not occupy half of the time. Understand, River Styx replied. Of course, the development of the primordial world will be overall upward. There may be ups and downs, but it will not affect the overall trend. Even if destruction is destined, the era of the ruler of the demonic path is destined to be short. There will not be a long period of decline, and there will be chaos. I will suppress Ro. I will not let him destroy the universe prematurely. Hotu also sent a message. Take good care of Ro. The primordial world's timeline will be divided into 4 seasons: spring birth, summer bloom, autumn fruit, and winter hide. Ro will only appear at the final moment when everything is destroyed. River Styx promised. Then, Emperor Wa and Emperor She also sent a message. Ro, poor Ro. He did not know how much of a scapegoat he had taken. He was destined to be suppressed until the end of the universe's time. Below, Heavenly Lord Yuanyu's entire body trembled. Ro, the destruction demon god, is Ro. According to the future legend of the Ultimate, the destruction demon god was suppressed in the Ultimate after his defeat. After the primordial world shattered, the destruction demon god's power increased greatly, and he tainted the Ultimate, turning it into a terrifying chaos hole that devours and obliterates everything. It is located at the bottom of the realm sea. After I prove my Tao, I have been searching for the destruction demon god. At first, I thought it was Patriarch River Styx. After he brought up the great Tao of the Ultimate, I thought it was even more so. I thought the legend of the Ultimate was wrong, that there was no destruction demon god at all, and that the Ultimate was the destruction demon god. I did not expect it to be Ro. Suppressed in the Ultimate, tainted the Ultimate. It's all fake. This is a show put on by the demonic path. It's a show put on by Patriarch River Styx and Old Demon Ro to create the foundation of the demonic path, the ultimate Tao of the Ultimate. Yuanyu suppressed his anger and did not roar out. River Styx thought happily, now, all the great divines support me in suppressing Ro until the end of time. Now, Ro, it's fine if you are willing. It's fine if you are unwilling. Just stay in the Ultimate, this Pangaji. Even if you create an incarnation, someone will help me monitor it. Don't think about causing trouble for me. I just gave up a useless destruction great Tao and locked you, the demon ancestor, who is most likely to cause me trouble. Now, isn't it up to me to decide what the demonic path wants to do? Laughing with arms akimbo, yes, the demonic path will definitely cultivate your destruction great Tao as the main path in the future, but you are locked in the Ultimate. Who else can they listen to but me? You can just obediently be the highest leader in the prison. He. Chapter 1236. After the 3 discussions of the great mystical abilities were completed, they decided on the general trend of the primordial universe in the future. Even if there were any changes, it would only be a temporary setback. There would not be any major trouble. The great heavenly lord of primordial beginning then gestured for Guang Chengzi to ring the bell. As the golden bell rang 9 times, the primordial beginning said, "This time the general trend of the world has been set. It is already the true form of the primordial world after Pangu created the world. I will order someone to draw a scroll of the primordial world true form for all fellow Taoists to sign. If there is no mistake with this picture, after we transform into Pangu, we will open the sky according to the picture." Then, he ordered Tai to hand over the picture. The great mystical abilities looked at it one by one and left their marks on it. It became a supreme treasure. The true form of the primordial world was drawn on it. All the ferocious lands of the earthly fiends and heavenly spirit veins could be seen on the picture. Moreover, the picture rotated with the world. Any changes in the structure of the primordial universe would be reflected on the picture. After signing the primordial world true form picture, it was time for the Purple Cloud Palace meeting to end. The great heavenly lord of primordial beginning finally said, after the primordial era, the 3,000 chaos god fiends appeared and fought for the position of Pangu. However, it was a killing tribulation. Although it did not harm the essence of Dara, it was not fated with peace. Fellow Taoists, if you do not wish to enter the tribulation and live in peace, you can avoid the tribulation in the Purple Cloud Palace. You will not be tainted and live freely. However, if you attain the body of a chaos god fiend, you will not be able to escape this tribulation. If you want to hide in the Purple Cloud Palace, you should change your footing. The great heavenly lord of primordial beginning picked up the tri-treasure Rui and knocked it down. The embryonic form of the Purple Cloud Palace multiverse with the structure of the Tao Palace turned into a cliff in the chaos. The chaos chi rolled around the cliff, but it did not affect the cliff at all. Those who have no intention of achieving the Tao of the chaos god fiend can reside on the cliff. After the primordial world is opened up, they will appear again. This was also an old tradition of the primordial world. Zhao Gongming saw his 24 senior brothers smiling. They sat empty in the meeting and only watched from the sidelines. They had no intention of taking action at all. If it wasn't because they still cared about the fate of being master and disciple, they would have long left the mortal world. The 24 Prime, clear Dara, leaped onto the cliff and turned into 24 chaotic pearls. Then, many Dara, who had lost their Tao and had nothing to worry about, turned into connate numinous treasures of various colors and were displayed on the cliff in the chaos. No matter how the chaos sea below surged, it did not touch them at all. Holy *T. Treasure-snatching rock. Dara, who had just attained Taoism, was dumbfounded. Many rookies cursed in their hearts. If the primordial spiritual treasures on the treasure-snatching rock were placed there by humans, would there still be a share for them? They had originally thought that after the opening of the sky, they would be able to get some primordial spiritual treasures from the treasure-snatching rock. In the future, many disciples of the younger generation who had not attained Taoism of Dara could walk around with primordial spiritual treasures. As the top existence in the primordial world, Dara, he could not possibly be empty-handed, right? River Styx laughed. They had thought too much. Did they really think that primordial spiritual treasures were ownerless objects born out of thin air? Primordial resources? That was a carrot in a pit. A flag flew out of Premier's sleeve, a Taiji diagram appeared on Taishang's body, and a small bell flew out of Tai deity's body. Except for these 3 treasures, they threw all the other spiritual treasures onto the treasure-snatching rock. Apart from the accompanying spiritual treasures transformed from their own great ways, all the other spiritual treasures transformed from the primordial inextinguishable divine light were placed on the treasure-snatching cliff so that they would not be affected by the killing tribulation of Pangu in the Taisu era. These 3 treasures had other origins, so they could not avoid being affected by the killing tribulation of Pangu. River Styx had just arrived in the untainted land. He had nothing in his sleeves, so he was very poor. He did not have any disciples or friends who could transform into primordial spiritual treasures for him to use. Anyway, at his level, the primordial spiritual treasures transformed from Dara were basically useless in fights of magic power and enlightenment, unless they were transformed into primordial spiritual treasures by a powerful divine at the same level. For example, the Bell of Chaos in Tai's hand was transformed from the Chaos Emperor after he went offline. Premier and Taishang each had a primordial spiritual treasure transformed from a powerful divine's offline thread. These primordial spiritual treasures were transformed from beings who had proved the Tao of Pangu, so they were also Pangu's Dharma idol. It was impossible for them not to be contaminated by Pangu's tribulation, so they did not need to be placed on the treasure-snatching cliff. But in fact, primordial spiritual treasures were not very useful. In the untainted land, there was no existence that the three pure ones could not defeat together. Even the premier could not defeat that person alone. If the premier could not defeat that person, then the primordial spiritual treasures would be useless. These treasures that even Dara yearned for were only useful in their hands. In fact, the premier preferred to hit people with the tri-gem Rui. Maybe it was because the item was expensive and looked fragile, so it felt good to hit people with it. It was similar to the feeling of throwing a valuable item on the ground, which made one's heart ache and feel good at the same time. Fortunately, the other powerful divines were not as poor as river Styx. They each invested many spiritual treasures. The number of Dara and chaotic divine demons that had transformed into primordial spiritual treasures was almost the same. It was obvious that the old Dara was lazy. Seeing the three primordial spiritual treasures still floating in the chaos, the premier sighed and said, "My friends, you are in the tribulation. Even if you forget yourself for a while, you will not be able to have peace." The three primordial spiritual treasures were equivalent to the real body of a chaotic divine demon, or a different form of the real body of a chaotic divine demon, suppressing the chaos. The raging chaos chi was immediately suppressed when it came to the edge of the three primordial spiritual treasures. These three powerful divines were all great figures who had proved the Tao of Pangu. They had Pangu's karma and were destined to become a part of the real body of Pangu. In fact, the three pure ones were not very kind. They took advantage of others and used their real bodies as axes when they went offline. Wait, won't they become Pangu axes when they combine? Yuan Yu was a little confused. Only the powerful divines knew how to play. Goddess Nviwa quietly pulled Fushi beside her and said, "If I lose my mind and leave, and you dare to use my real body of a chaotic divine demon as an axe, I will kill you when I come back." Behind them, Hutu said in a weird tone, "Yo, Sister Emperor Nviwa has turned into Tao, but she still doesn't forget to give her body to her lover." Goddess Nviwa rolled her beautiful eyes and ignored her. Sakyamuni was silent for the entire Purple Cloud Palace meeting. He knew that he was being ostracized by the powerful divines, and the dominating human race didn't like his Buddhism either. As a religion, it was detrimental to the continuation and development of the race. Buddhism couldn't be a national religion or a race religion, but only a way of cultivation and enlightenment. The three sovereigns and 5 emperors of the human race had long concluded that the mystic door couldn't be the orthodox religion of the human race. The orthodox religion of the human race must be the school of philosophers. The 3 religions were outside of civilization, and only the school of philosophers was the orthodox religion of the human race. Whether it was the mystic door of cultivation or Taoism of enlightenment, they were all outside of civilization. Even Laozi had to pass down Taoism as the orthodox religion of the human race. The orthodox religion of the human race was passed down from the 3 sovereigns to the 5 emperors, the 5 emperors to the 3 kings, Yao, Shun, and Yu, the 3 kings to the Duke of Zhou, and the Duke of Zhou to the school of philosophers. Each of the school of philosophers had its own inheritance, and only the Confucian school dominated. Even the gods followed the line of Confucian worshippers as the orthodox religion. Royal Heaven Hutu, the Lord of Mountains, Rivers, Sun, and Moon, Zhurong Gonggong, the god of water and fire, Gomong Xianming, and the 4 seasons ritual, all of these were integrated into the rituals. When, where, and what god should be worshipped. Although Confucius said that he didn't talk about strange powers and gods, when the rituals were made, these were the areas where the Confucian religion interfered. If they didn't enter the rituals, they wouldn't be orthodox. Sakya said to the 2 great divines in the form of a tree and a flower, "2 senior brothers, my identity will not change. I will not appear in the form of a primal chaos fiend god, lest the disciples misunderstand my method. Before I prove my Tao, I'll entrust my disciples to you, 2 senior brothers, to take care of them." Ancient Buddha Zhuan-Ti put his palms together and said, "Disciple will follow Buddha's words. Before Buddha returns, I'll maintain Buddhism." Sakyamuni wasn't like Laozi. He didn't sever his Tao and had 2 true selves. Sakyamuni only had one origin, which was Prince Sakya of Kapila Way. There was only one Buddha in the primordial world, and that was Sakyamuni. Before Sakyamuni, there was no Buddha. After Sakyamuni proved his Tao, Buddhism became vast. However, Sakya was a postnatal living being, and he proved his Tao after the primordial world was broken. If Buddhism did not exist before Gautama Buddha proved his Tao, it would be equivalent to giving up a very long time in the timeline. Moreover, giving up the upstream timeline would also cause great harm to the interests of Buddhism. Therefore, two ancient Buddhas founded the Western sect. The two chaotic god-fiends, Jie-in and Zhuan-Ti, occupied the upstream timeline with the Western sect. Then, they preached the Tao to Daipamkara. Daipamkara founded the Sand sect after the primordial world was broken, waiting for the day when Gautama Buddha appeared. Oh, my Buddha Sakyamuni, when you proved your Tao, the entire Mount Meru whispered your name, Sakyamuni. After Sakyamuni explained, he turned into Tao and left. He didn't appear as a chaotic divine demon, nor did he appear as a numinous treasure. Buddha didn't need other origins, and Sakyamuni wasn't a reincarnation. He was just Sakyamuni, a postnatal living being, an enlightened being, a Buddha, not a chaotic divine demon, nor the source of the great Tao, nor a connate numinous treasure. Therefore, Sakya didn't participate in the game of fighting for Pangu. The primordial world wasn't his worldview. There would be two ancient Buddhas, Jie-in and Zhuan-Ti, who would embed the Buddhist view of the universe into the primordial universe on his behalf. Zhuan-Ti looked at the place where Sakyamuni had transformed into the Tao with respect in his eyes. He said, "The Gautama Buddha has passed away and will only come into being after the endless calamities. He will prove the Tao again and establish the orthodoxy of Buddhism. Those with great mystical powers excluded Buddha and prevented Buddha from obtaining Pangu. It's really hateful." "Junior brother, could Buddha be Pangu?" Buddha Jie-in said, "Has there ever been Pangu in Buddhism? The universe is formed because of fate, the rise and fall of fate. Why will we need Pangu? How can Buddha be killed by Pangu as a chaotic divine demon?" Jie-in said lightly, "The primordial world isn't our game. Buddha is only here to enlighten those who are fated. As for those who are not fated, let them go." "Senior brother, you're right. I was too naive." Zhuan-Ti had an epiphany and put his palms together. The purple cloud palace turned into the treasure-dividing cliff and was ready to hide in the chaos again. The people who attended the meeting in Dara also had to leave. They were ready to polish their chaotic, divine, demon-true bodies before the next era. However, River Styx stopped Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and said, "I see that Heavenly Lord bestowed a group of fellow Taoists who had turned into spiritual treasures to his disciples. He should let the younger disciples form a predestined relationship with the predecessors. Because of fate, his Tao will be influenced by the loss of my Dara and change his state." Great Heavenly Lord Yuanshi nodded and said, "Ancestor, do you have the intention to form a predestined relationship? If you can get the consent of any fellow Taoist, you can take it from the treasure-snatching rock in the future. Perhaps it will be of some help." River Styx only shook his head and said, "I'm a devil cult patriarch. How could I have such a predestined relationship? On the other hand, many of the devil treasures that my brother Ro entrusted to me were transformed by Dara of the devil path. I either cut off his followers or planted hidden dangers in his followers to force him to lose me. In the future, I will settle accounts with him. I will uphold justice for my Dara, who was forced to lose my devil path. I'm just here to share an idea with fellow Taoists." River Styx said, "The Purple Cloud Palace is the place where the great divines discuss matters. It can be turned into the treasure-snatching cliff to allow many Taoist friends who lost me to live in peace. Even if the primordial spiritual treasures transformed by Dara are bestowed by fellow Taoists, they can only benefit one or two disciples. Those who form a predestined relationship are only the disciples of the three pristines. You must know that the wonders of karma are not limited to one or two people. Why don't we open up a secret realm in the prototype of the universe of the treasure-snatching cliff for the primordial spiritual treasures of fellow Taoist friends to live in? Wouldn't it be more spacious and comfortable? Then, at a fixed time, the treasure-snatching rock will appear to communicate with the outside world due to fate. First, it will allow the untainted land cultivators to enter the secret realm and form a predestined relationship with the primordial spiritual treasures. With its protection, they will be able to tide through the tribulations. Second, it will allow the primordial spiritual treasures to be disturbed by the outside world. They will look for the person they like and appear again. As far as I know, in the previous untainted land eras, there were many primordial spiritual treasures that were unwilling to appear. Only 1 or 2 out of 10 recognized their master. It was too empty, and it was not good for them to find themselves again. Opening up a secret realm for treasure hunting might allow them to gather many Taoist companions. It would also be convenient for many primordial spiritual treasures to reincarnate. Heavenly Primogenitor thought about it. River Styx was right. By opening up the treasure-snatching rock and creating a secret realm for treasure hunting, there would be many cultivators who would try their best to attract some primordial spiritual treasures. They wanted to abduct them. Maybe a few pairs of primordial spiritual treasures would appear with the cultivators, be contaminated by the mortal world, and find themselves again. Didn't the primordial spiritual pearl, transformed by immortal Tai's good friend, fall from the Nuwas Dao Palace and reincarnate as the spiritual pearl, Neza, to prove his Dao to Dara? It was hard to guess what River Styx was thinking. Heavenly Primogenitor knew that this guy was definitely not thinking about the benefits he mentioned. However, River Styx was very calculative. Based on his understanding of Chun Ang's other incarnation, sometimes this guy would do something that seemed to be meaningless and did not have any effect in the end. He just found it interesting. It was hard to guess what this kind of person was planning, because sometimes it was purely a bad taste. And River Styx's true self, Chenong, had a very bad taste. Perhaps he wanted to create a treasure-hunting secret realm and replicate a common element of a Xinxiao world in the untainted land. What about the instance realm? The instance realm is a fine tradition of immortal cultivation. The untainted land must inherit it and develop it. Whether it's the antiquity relic, the slough of a predecessor, the treasures in the ancient tomb, the spirit space, the materials, the inheritance, or the treasure hunting, we must do it. Equipment, cultivation methods, materials, and inheritance are all in the instance realm. How can Dara players not enter the instance realm in the untainted land? Moreover, top-notch equipment like the innate numinous treasure is determined internally. It's too boring. How are we going to motivate the players? The treasure division cliff instance realm must exist, and it can't just be a bare cliff. River Styx was very creative. In the treasure division cliff instance realm, he thought of many ways to play the instance realm. He made the innate numinous treasures transform into the prototype universe of Dara's Dao fruit and land in the secret realm, forming mountains, rivers, and strange objects. They became the cornerstones of the world, forming a world made of numinous treasures. The primordial chaos golden dipper turned into a chaotic hole. The golden flood dragon scissors turned into a pair of flood dragons. The 24C calming divine pearls each had a world. The netherworld book turned into the earth fetal membrane. The 8 trigrams furnace raised a flaming mountain. The yin-yang mirror turned into the sun and moon lake. The fallen soul bell hung the fallen soul star. The male and female sword stood side by side on 2 peaks. The cloud light handkerchief fell into a sea of clouds, and the golden cloud crown glowed. There were also various palaces, the 5 elements world, the living kingdom, and the rare birds and beasts transformed from the innate numinous treasure Taoist connotation. Dara was the prototype universe and the seed of the world. The innate numinous treasures transformed from Dara naturally had the ability to evolve into a world. As the prototype of the multiverse universe, the treasure-snatching rock carried the universe, transformed from many numinous treasures, and formed a wonderful world. Although it did not enter the untainted land, it was still a large world, not inferior to the Milky Way and the nine heavens. Seeing this, the premier could not help but frown. Although River Styx's words make sense, using the innate numinous treasures in the treasure-snatching rock to create another world is not inferior to the future untainted land. Using it to carry the innate numinous treasures and turn it into a treasure-seeking secret realm is too much of a waste. This can clearly establish the foundation of a great sect, not inferior to the Western Pure Land. Speaking of which, it is not inferior to the ultimate. He used all kinds of tricks to establish the ultimate. Today, he used a little trick to create a world of innate numinous treasures. What is his purpose? This person does things without a plan. Sometimes, he acts according to his heart. It is really hard to understand. The premier had a headache because of River Styx's unpredictable way of doing things. This will be the ultimate instance dungeon of the untainted land, the ancestor of all secret realms. River Styx said with satisfaction, "As the designer of the secret realm, I am very satisfied. The rules of the instance dungeon are extremely changeable. It will definitely make the players feel very excited." It was as if he had made a bad plan. It would definitely rekindle the hope of future generations of cultivators who came to seek treasures. The premier established the rules of the treasure-snatching rock. Every time before the tribulation of heaven and earth, the treasure-snatching rock will appear. All Dara and cultivators can come here to look for lucky chances. River Styx also took the opportunity to create some rules. When the living beings of the future attain Taoism and immortality, they will have the opportunity to sense this realm and come here to look for lucky chances. After the untainted land is broken, there are many worlds in the heavenly realm sea. If there is a danger of the devil's tribulation and the ultimate, they can also sense this realm's lucky chances. They can come here to look for spiritual materials and spiritual treasures to suppress Ro's incarnation of destruction. After the two of them established the secret realm of the treasure-snatching rock, if one had great divine sense, the spiritual treasures would still be placed on the rock and could be taken at will. If one did not have such divine sense and could not see through the treasure-snatching rock's true appearance, it would be a world of innate numinous treasures, a multiverse, and one could only enter to search for treasures. River Styx did not do anything to the diabolism spiritual treasures that Dara had transformed into. After suppressing Ro, they would all be mine. Chapter 12:37. Fan Tianjuan's face was sallow and bitter. He had just become a Tao Lord, so he couldn't wait to cross the realm sea with the power of a Tao Lord, diving down to the bottom of the realm sea. The bustling world became extremely barren when it reached the bottom of the realm sea. There were all kinds of secrets hidden here like ghosts and shadows. The desolate ruins of worlds hung there in the dark realm sea. There were some indescribable things that had been destroyed here, and the aura of the Armageddon seemed to be growing. The strange monsters that were born from these ruins would cause even the most supreme Tao Lords in the universe to have a headache if they encountered them. Not to mention that this was the headquarters of the demonic Tao. In the falling world, dragged by the ultimate, there might be an old demon who was trying to break through to the Tao Lord realm. The environment here was dangerous even for Tao Lords. Not to mention that further down was the ultimate of everything, the ultimate that obliterated all things. After Fan Tianjun became a Tao Lord, he was only happy for a short period of time before he was ruthlessly slapped in the face by the cold reality, waking up from the warm and hopeful dream of the future. Fan Tianjun looked down on those heavenly monarchs who only dared to condense postnatal Tao seeds. From the day he started cultivating, he was the pride of the Brahma realm. He was born in the Brahma realm's largest aristocratic family, the controller of this realm, the Fan family. Since childhood, he was a peerless genius of the Fan family and even the Brahma realm. His foundation was built with the most precious primordial spirit item. The speed at which he became an immortal broke the cultivation record of all the worlds known to the Fan family. When he built his foundation, he was a genius among the young geniuses. After becoming an immortal, he was a rising star. Even after becoming a Tao Lord, he was the most promising Tao Lord in the last 100,000 years. Fan Tianjun walked the path of Tao unification, condensing a Tao seed and planting it in the world. Then he cultivated the Tao seed himself, making it take root and sprout, inscribing his own great Tao in the world. As his great Tao was inscribed in a world, it would become a Tao Lord, equivalent to the Tao Lord realm of other cultivation methods. Then he would use this world as the foundation to give birth to his Tao seed. He even traced the Tao seed back to time, penetrating the beginning and end of the universe. Finally, he merged with the Tao and the universe, proving the Tao of Dara. Dara's Tao seed method also had different methods. Some heavenly lords would destroy the world that their Tao seed depended on and absorb the great Tao of the world to complete their own Tao seed. Then, they would seize an opposite Tao seed and rely on each other. Like two fulcrums, they would borrow strength from each other. The two opposite Tao seeds would form a spiral shape and continuously borrow strength from each other to improve. They would plant the seed at the origin of the timeline and into the chaos. From the origin, they would sprout and inscribe their own great Tao in the chaos. Now, it was extremely difficult for a perfected great Tao to inscribe his great Tao. However, if he came to the source of time, the chaos where the great Tao had yet to be born, he could plant a Tao seed there and inscribe his great Tao, making it a lot easier to integrate the Tao into the universe. It was said that it was created by some great experts who used the ancient Khanate gods cultivation method to create it. In primordial times, Khanate life forms were extremely powerful the moment they were born. Compared to postnatal life forms that lacked resources, they were incomparably powerful. Therefore, they could send their true bodies into the chaos, to the origin of the great Tao, to validate their Tao as chaos god fiends and attain the Dara realm of postnatal life forms. From Brahma Tianjuan's point of view, the chaos god fiend realm, that these Khanate god fiends with strength that was countless times stronger than their past lives would be the true perfect Dara realm. And the so-called Dara realm was just a crippled realm that Tao lords with weak postnatal foundations had tried all means to take shortcuts. Brahma Tianjun had some thoughts about this. When he cultivated, his foundation was much stronger than other cultivators. It made it easy for him to challenge those at a higher level than him. When he fought disciples from aristocratic families at the same realm as him, it was like teaching children a lesson. As for those disciples with solid foundations, they could crush itinerant cultivators at the same realm as ants. Only with a strong foundation would they be able to go further. Every step had to be perfect and extreme. Their foundation had to be unprecedented and extremely powerful. If others were a spring, they had to be an ocean. Accumulating an ocean was, of course, much more difficult than opening a spring. But this was the only way to go further. Fan Tianjun had watched as his peers who didn't have a solid enough foundation slowly fell behind, and he didn't know when he would disappear from sight. Those itinerant cultivators were eliminated generation after generation. Without a solid foundation like the disciples of aristocratic families, they could only rack their brains, take some crooked ways, and create some seemingly strange ideas, but they were all shortcuts. Brahma Tianjun could beat 10 of such weaklings with one hand, but 10 opponents at the same level as him at the Tao Lord realm. If it was before he became an immortal, Brahma Tianjun could kill people at the same level as him like slaughtering chickens, and those with weak foundations would die no matter how many came. He was invincible among his peers. This was Brahma Tianjuan's unparalleled reputation. Brahma Tianjun could only sigh that he couldn't be born in the prehistoric era. During that glorious ancient era, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was extremely rich, and treasures of heaven and earth were abundant. Even a blade of grass was a treasure that later generations of Tao lords would fight for. His birth was favored by the destiny of this world, but Brahma Tianjun still felt that his peerless talent was buried. If he could return to the prehistoric era, he would be able to become a chaotic divine demon like the Khanate divine demon and lay a solid foundation for the Dara realm. Even without the prehistoric conditions, Brahma Tianjun would not condense the acquired Tao seed like ordinary Tao lords. He wanted to condense the real Khanate Tao seed and send it back to the chaotic era to inscribe the Khanate Great Tao. But there were very few Khanate Great Tao in the world, and according to Brahma Tianjuan's deduction, the goal of cultivators who cultivated Tao seed was to merge with the Dara realm and inscribe their great Tao in the prehistoric universe. Therefore, Tao seeds would interfere with each other. Once someone occupied a Tao seed, his Tao seed would be the manifestation of that kind of great Tao, and those downstream would not be able to condense the same Tao seed. The acquired great Tao was easy to deal with because it was relatively weak, and the acquired great Tao was an evolution of the acquired great Tao. For example, the great Tao of Gu, the great Tao of Zither, and the great Tao of Sword were the great Tao born from the acquired creatures. Every cultivator deduced it according to their own Tao, and rarely would there be a conflict. However, the Khanate Great Tao was the foundation of the universe, and was the fundamental law. Basically, it was occupied by the Khanate creatures upstream of the timeline. For example, the Khanate Yin-Yang Great Tao, the Khanate Tai Great Tao, the Khanate Merit Great Tao. Brahma Tianjun wanted to merge with the Khanate Tao seed and build a solid foundation for his Dara realm. It was the biggest difficulty he had ever faced since he started cultivating, because it had nothing to do with talent and comprehension, but purely luck and external conditions. Fortunately, Brahma Tianjun was a genius. After his painstaking research and several dangerous investigations, he finally found that there was another great Tao that miraculously survived in the universe, except for the two great Taos of the ultimate, the Khanate Destruction Great Tao and the Khanate Nothingness Great Tao, which were too dangerous for anyone to prove. Or rather, half of the Khanate Great Tao, the Khanate Great Tao of Time. When it combined with the Khanate Great Tao of Void, it was the complete Khanate Great Tao of Time and Space, the Tao seed of the universe. Space was king, and time was supreme. The future of these two great Taos was extremely bright, and they were one of the best great Taos to prove the Khanate Great Tao of Dara. According to Brahma Tianjuan's calculations, the Khanate Great Tao seed of time was extremely difficult, but to send the Khanate Great Tao seed back to the origin of the Great Tao, it was one of the easiest Tao seeds, and it was almost as difficult as the acquired Great Tao seed. For a moment, Brahma Tianjun was wild with joy. The Khanate Great Tao of Destruction and the Khanate Great Tao of Nothingness could only be formed when the ultimate destroyed the universe, and when the Void Tribulation and Annihilation Tribulation came. Moreover, the Khanate Great Tao of Destruction was competing with the mysterious destruction demon god in the ultimate, so the future was very bad. Although it was extremely powerful, Brahma Tianjun didn't want it. The Khanate Great Tao of Time was his only goal. Brahma Tianjun temporarily put aside the difficulty of forming the Khanate Great Tao seed and inscribing the Brahma realm's heavenly monarch realm. According to his own calculations, if he succeeded in proving the Khanate Great Tao of Dara, he would be able to resist at least 8 Daras' encirclement by himself. However, the cultivation of the acquired Great Tao only requires acquire vitality, and every improvement in the innate Great Tao requires innate vitality, and even innate spirit items. Thinking of this, Brahma Tianjuan's initial excitement gradually disappeared, and he even began to stiffen and despair. When he realized this, he almost smashed the Tao seed. After the primitive universe was broken, where the hell did the innate vitality come from? Occasionally, a few innate spirit items would appear, but it was already enough to make the Tao Lords fight over them. Okay? Now, if he wanted to mass-produce innate spirit items, the only way was to return to the origin, destroy the worlds in the celestial realm sea, and refine them into innate spirit items. This was equivalent to destroying the world. Those worlds without living beings were fine, but those worlds with cultivation civilizations, wouldn't they fight him to the death? Although Brahma Tianjun was arrogant and viewed all living beings as ants, when there were enough ants, they could still bite people to death. Okay? Brahma Tianjun was not ready to fight the other Tao Lords in the universe yet. Moreover, in order to perfect the Khanate Great Tao Seed of Time, I need innate spirit items. In other words, I need to destroy 1,000 Brahma realms. The Brahma realm is a great void world, and its volume is 10,000 times that of an ordinary world. Okay, in other words, I need to destroy 10 million worlds to prove the Khanate Great Tao of Dara. Even if Brahma Tianjun was crazy, he wouldn't dare to do this. The Tao Lords of the demonic Tao had demonized worlds one by one, while you had 10,000. Was he a Tao Lord or were you a Tao Lord? If Brahma Tianjun said this, he would probably be attacked by all the Tao Lords of the universe. Thinking of this astronomical number, Brahma Tianjun forced himself to forget about it, or he would become the most evil demon in the history of the universe, the kind that could prove the Hotian Great Tao of evil. In the future, he would probably be revered as a top-titled fiend monarch of the demonic Tao. When that time came, he might as well change to the Hotian Great Tao of evil. Even those old demons who cultivated the Great Tao of destruction would have blue veins popping on their foreheads, and their faces would turn black or green. Therefore, after Brahma Tianjun became a Tao Lord, he took out a drop of Khanate cosmic true water that the Fan family had kept for 1,000,000 years, and used it to wash his Tao seed of time. After passing the unstable period of becoming a Tao Lord, he hurried out to search for treasures. He had another choice, and that was to use the Khanate Great Tao seed of time to condense cosmic true water in the flow of time to perfect his Tao seed. It was just 10,000 drops of Khanate cosmic true water, and each drop would take him 10,000 years to condense. In 100 million years, he, Brahma Tianjun, will be able to break through to Dara. What the hell? Slam. In 100 million years, even his bones would turn to ash. Tao Lords could live, but not to this extent. I can only go to the bottomless ruins to gamble. Brahma Tianjun said to himself. The Fan family was the strongest aristocratic family in the Brahma heaven realm, and one of the 3 great clans. The Fan, Yu, and Zun clans ruled the Brahma heaven realm and the 9,000 low-level worlds nearby. Aristocratic families that could be called great clans were the most elite of aristocratic families, and they had at least one Tao Lord to lead the family. As the leader of the 3 great clans, the Fan family had produced 4 Tao Lords before Brahma Tianjun. Therefore, he knew many secrets about Tao Lords. For example, the bottomless ruins. All of the worlds in the celestial realm, sea, would gradually decline and age before being pulled into the bottomless ruins. Since ancient times, countless worlds have been pulled into the bottomless ruins and ground into nothingness. The bottomless ruins was the nightmare of all cultivators, and it was the end of all things. All Daos returned to nothingness, and all existences would be obliterated by the bottomless ruins. But that wasn't always the case. Most worlds would be completely destroyed upon reaching the outer perimeter of the bottomless ruins. Although the outer perimeter of the bottomless ruins was terrifying, it wasn't able to obliterate everything. A world would always have some things that could settle in the outer perimeter of the bottomless ruins, and those things that could survive the power of the bottomless ruins were extremely valuable. Almost all of them were natural treasures, and some were Khanate treasures that had survived the destruction of the primordial era, such as the fragments of Mount Bujo, the remains of the Netherworld Blood Sea, the ancestral veins of the primeval mountains, the essence of the Kunlun Mountains, and so on. There were even strange items that had been born during the Chaos era. These things could settle in the outer perimeter of the bottomless ruins, and when the bottomless ruins swallowed them, they could be swept to the edges of the bottomless ruins. That was where Tao Lords could reach, and thus the most dangerous occupation of Tao Lords, the bottomless ruins scavenger. The few worlds in the outer perimeter of the bottomless ruins had markets for scavengers to trade. There were even some immortals who dared to take huge risks and grasp the rhythm of the bottomless ruins, swallowing and spitting. When the bottomless ruins shrank, they would go to the edges to search for treasures. Although they weren't as daring as Tao Lords to venture deeper into the bottomless ruins, they could still pick up some of the things that had been washed out. Now, this was the largest trading market for Khanate treasures and chaos items. It was also Brahma Tianjun's destination this time. The Brahma Heaven Bureau had long heard of a bottomless ruins scavenger who had picked up a fragment of Mount Bujo from the bottomless ruins. He had imitated the ancient legendary heaven-flipping seal and refined it into an earth-overturning seal. It was a strange treasure that shook the entire universe. When Brahma Tianjun learned that he needed the resources to achieve the Tao, he had almost wanted to steal it during his most desperate moments. Later, he felt that the other party had the earth-overturning seal, and he was most likely no match for him, so he gave up on the idea. Brahma Tianjun dived deep into the realm sea and saw an indescribable chaos hole, a huge whirlpool of realm sea, a bottomless, unimaginable shadow, and a destructive power that made Brahma Tianjun tremble. Every time they came to the bottomless ruins, the Tao Lords felt as insignificant as ants. They lamented the unimaginably powerful Khanate fiend gods that had disappeared due to the collapse of the primordial world. Legend has it that the bottomless ruins was a huge sea formed by the southern nether sea during the primordial world. It was originally just a huge sea for the primordial world to swallow the four seas and renew the seawater. Before the collapse of the primordial world, because of the ancient war of gods and fiend gods, a mysterious destruction fiend god was suppressed in the sea of the bottomless ruins by another mighty expert. After the collapse of the primordial world, the destruction fiend god's destructive power became even stronger, so he contaminated the sea of the bottomless ruins and turned it into the place where all things end today. Brahma Tianjun couldn't help but sigh when he thought about the great war of gods and fiend gods during the primordial world. To be able to create such a terrifying existence like the bottomless ruins, how powerful were the ancient gods and fiend gods? It was because of this that he had painstakingly pursued the Khanate Great Tao that might be comparable to the ancient fiend gods and fiend gods. When a shifty-eyed, white-haired old Taoist heard Brahma Tianjun's lament, his eyes flickered and he went forward to say, according to the legend, the one who suppressed the destruction fiend god was another demon ancestor of the devil Tao, the demon ancestor of slaughter. In order to seize the power of the devil Tao, the demon ancestor of slaughter ruthlessly suppressed the demon ancestor of destruction, who was also a demon ancestor, when the primordial world was broken. Brahma Tianjun frowned and said, if that's the case, how could the Tao of destruction become one of the two main paths of the devil Tao? Didn't the demon ancestor of slaughter suppress them long ago to prevent them from releasing the demon ancestor of destruction? So there's another theory. The old Taoist chuckled and seemed to be waiting for Brahma Tianjun to ask further questions. How could a proud man like Brahma Tianjun be controlled by such a small trick? He smiled coldly and was about to fall into a world wreckage at the edge of the ultimate. The old Taoist stopped him and said, fellow Taoist, don't be in such a hurry. He rolled his eyes and said, fellow Taoist, I'm afraid it's your first time in the ultimate and you're not familiar with the people and the place. The ultimate is not a good place, so it's better to find a local bully to guide you. How do you know it's my first time in the ultimate? Brahma Tianjun frowned and said. The shifty-eyed old Taoist shrank his neck and looked around. To tell you the truth, I've been wandering around the edge of the ultimate for tens of thousands of years, but I've never seen someone like you. Looking at your youthful face, I can tell that you're a young Taoist who hasn't reached the Tao for a long time. You can't be from another realm, so of course you're a newcomer. A newcomer like you needs experience in the ultimate the most, and it just so happens that I don't lack experience in the ultimate. If you're kind enough, I'll teach you all the experience I've accumulated in the ultimate for tens of thousands of years. This is a matter of life and death. It's not a loss. Brahma Tianjun looked at him deeply and said faintly, I think you don't dare to enter the ultimate and only dare to wander around the outside to take advantage of newcomers. How is that possible? The old Taoist was so anxious that he jumped. He looked at the cold Brahma Tianjun and sighed helplessly. I cherish my life too much and don't dare to enter the ultimate, but I don't dare to deceive people. Otherwise, the Taoist lords I deceived will tear me apart when they come back. I cherish my life the most. I'm just using some experience to earn a small introduction fee for newcomers. I've worked hard here for tens of thousands of years to familiarize myself with the ultimate. It's just earning some hard-earned money. It's also good for newcomers. Otherwise, do you think everyone would let me go so easily? Fan Tianjun immediately understood what was going on. Taoist lords also needed resources. And how could it be faster to collect resources from Taoist lords? Those who dared to come to the ultimate were all Taoist lords who liked to gamble. To them, this little bit of money was nothing, and they could earn it back if they found a connate spirit item in the ultimate. And this old Taoist experience was really a matter of life and death for Taoist lords who had just entered the ultimate. Moreover, this old thing had spent tens of thousands of years to gather more than just a little bit of information. Those were all things that were worth a lot of money. Moreover, he had spent tens of thousands of years accumulating experience, so no one could compete with him. The older one was, the more valuable one's experience was. Therefore, don't be fooled by this old Taoist's poor appearance. He was doing a unique business, so who knew how rich he was behind the scenes? At this moment, Brahma Tianjun almost wanted to kill him and rob him of his treasures. But on second thought, this old Taoist had survived in the ultimate for tens of thousands of years. The ultimate wasn't a good place, so how could such a person not be a tough nut to crack? What do you want? Brahma Tianjun decided to make a deal. Connate spirit item. The old Taoist said sneakily, his greedy eyes staring at the valuable parts of Brahma Tianjun's body. You still want connate spirit item? Brahma Tianjun was exasperated. What an exorbitant demand. You get what you pay for, young man. You must be very short of money. The old Taoist rolled his eyes and said, and it's not just short of money. To you, this is just a little bit of money. If you want to make a lot of money, you must first know how to spend it. Being stingy with this little bit of money won't help you at all. What you have to do now is learn how to spend money. Brahma Tianjun calmed down. The old Taoist was right. This little bit of money was really insignificant compared to the resources he needed for his innate Tao. Moreover, the resources he needed couldn't be gathered through ordinary means. He flicked out a bit of heavenly true water and said, "This is all I can pay for now. The rest will depend on your performance." All right, the old Taoist sang a promise. He swung the dirty horsetail whisk in his hand and put on his left arm, saying, "I guarantee you'll find it worth the money. I'm really worth the price. Let me tell you about this ancient secret." According to some devil sects with a long history, the slaughter demon ancestor had foreseen the calamity of the destruction of the untainted land in advance. He knew that the destruction of the untainted land was a great opportunity for the destruction demon ancestor. In order to make things difficult for his old rival, he persuaded some powerful experts to support him and suppress the destruction demon ancestor in the eye of the sea of returning ruins before the untainted land was destroyed. So that's how it is. Brahma Tianjun nodded inwardly. This made sense. The slaughter demon ancestor was a ruthless person who struck first. It was no wonder that those devil sects who believed in the destruction demon ancestor also respected the slaughter demon ancestor. It was said that the slaughter demon ancestor was still in the Netherblood Sea, living freely as the great Azura devil sect's patriarch. The destruction of the untainted land didn't shake this big shot's foundation at all. Pull up load next chapters.